Chapter 2687. Lu Li did have an epiphany. At this moment, he forced himself to forget everything. He would accept it even if he were to be killed. He tried his best to pierce through the paper window so that he could see the scenery outside. Then, he would be able to master the soul secret technique. A moment of enlightenment was better than 10,000 years of cultivation. The opportunity to gain enlightenment was too rare. An hour of enlightenment was equivalent to 100 years of cultivation. Therefore, Lu Li did not care about anything else. As long as he could succeed in the epiphany, he could still have a chance to turn the tables even if he was badly injured. Of course, if Guan Qianxiu hardened his heart, he might just be killed. Guan Qianxiu did not kill Lu Li. When Lu Li fainted, Guan Qianxiu dashed toward Lu Li and stared at the sovereign weapon in Lu Li's hand. This was the treasure of his clan's true clan. Although he had the intention of forcefully snatching it and it would be bad for his reputation, Guan Qianxiu couldn't care less about it. Xiu. He arrived at Lu Li's side easily and took the sovereign armament in his hand. He was relieved. The sovereign armament was back. Whether or not he could become a disciple of the Heaven Emperor sect, at the very least, he would not suffer a great loss. Soon, he realized something was wrong. Lu Li wasn't teleported out. Was Lu Li in a coma? According to the rules of the tournament, those who fainted would be sent out and eliminated. Lu Li wasn't teleported out. Did that mean he wasn't eliminated? An ominous glint flashed in his eyes. Lu Li was not teleported out in this state. Was he going to disable Lu Li? The rule was that killing was not allowed, but it didn't say that crippling was not allowed. Guan Qianxiu snorted. The sword in his hand glowed. With a ray of sword light, Guan Qianxiu stabbed at Lu Li's abdomen. He was going to destroy Lu Li's pellet. At the very least, Lu Li would be less of a threat. Besides, Lu Li would not have any chance to participate in the fight anymore. Bang! The ray of sword light landed on Lu Li's abdomen. With a muffled sound, the skin on Lu Li's abdomen exploded. However, the sword only pierced through the skin. It didn't go through his abdomen. Humph! Guan Qianxiu was enraged. He made several more moves, aiming at Lu Li's abdomen. The wound on Lu Li's abdomen was getting worse. If he were to stab a few more times, he would probably be able to pierce through it. At that time, the divine elixir would definitely explode. But at that moment, Guan Qianxiu stopped. He had attacked for so many times, but Lu Li didn't react. Guan Qianxiu suspected that Lu Li had passed out. If so, why didn't Lu Li teleport out? He was surprised and asked in a deep voice, "Patriarch Gu, I have a question. Why is Lu Li not eliminated directly?" Guan Qianxiu was not the only one confused. Those outside and many onlookers were confused as well. Lu Li was so badly injured and had fainted. Why didn't he teleport out? Did Guan Qianxiu have to kill Lu Li? Elder Gu's voice resounded in everyone's ears. Because he hasn't fainted and hasn't admitted defeat, according to the rules, I can't teleport him out. He's not unconscious? Everyone was confused, but Guan Qianxiu's eyes narrowed, and his body began to seethe with killing intent. After some thoughts, he rushed over like a gust of wind and stabbed at Lu Li's abdomen with his weapon. Whatever the case, it was the right thing to do to destroy Lu Li's pellet. At the very least, there wouldn't be any problems. Boom! Guan Qianxiu's move was full of strength, and he used the fundamental principle of gold, which was particularly brutal. Lu Li's abdomen was pierced through. Lu Li's eyes were still closed even though his abdomen was pierced through. That being said, Lu Li's pellet was tough enough that it didn't break. Without any hesitation, Guan Qianxiu kept stabbing at Lu Li's pellet with his sword. Lu Li remained motionless like a dead man, allowing Guan Qianxiu to strike at his pellet. Someone outside felt sorry for Lu Li. How could he be so cruel when he was in such a state? Boom! Finally, Lu Li's pellet exploded. Guan Qianxiu was relieved. Seeing that Lu Li was not teleported out, Guan Qianqiu frowned. He was ready to cut off Lu Li's hands and feet. In this way, Lu Li would no longer be a threat. Right at that moment, Lu Li opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with coldness, like a beast choosing its prey. Guan Qianqiu's heart skipped a beat. Buzzing, almost at the same time, Lu Li's eyes glowed. 2 streaks of green light shot into Guan Qianqiu's eyes. Guan Qianqiu was taken aback. He stepped back and at the same time checked his soul. His soul was not particularly strong. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been affected by the horn. This soul attack is strange. Soon, Guan Qianqiu realized something was wrong. The soul attack was like a viper piercing into his soul. His enchanted soul wanted to devour it, but the soul attack was as slippery as a loach. His enchanted soul could not catch up. Buzzing, green light kept coming out from Lu Li's eyes. After the 3rd streak of light went into Guan Qianqiu's body, he stopped moving. 3 streaks of soul energy were attacking him. His enchanted soul could not stand it anymore. He had to try his best to protect his soul. Otherwise, his soul would collapse. Buzzing. Lu Li kept on releasing soul attacks. He was injured and his soul was weak. That being said, he could not worry about that. He would not let Guan Qianqiu feel better even if he was defeated. Buzzing, seeing that Guan Qianqiu had stopped moving, Lu Li sent a message to Blood Fairy and told her to get the 7-colored glazed pagoda over. When the 7-colored glazed pagoda arrived, Lu Li yelled, "Guan Qianqiu, you are doomed." The door under the 7-colored glazed pagoda opened. Flames poured out and enveloped Guan Qianqiu. Guan Qianqiu's entire body was instantly set ablaze. Fortunately, he was wearing a powerful suit of armor, otherwise he would have been burnt to ashes. Ah! Guan Qianqiu woke up because of the pain. He realized he was on fire. He knew he was doomed. Even if he could kill Lu Li, he would be badly injured and he would never have the chance to level up. Guan Qianqiu's eyes glowed with ferocity. He had always hated Lu Li. He was about to be eliminated. How could he let Lu Li move on? Guan Qianqiu bellowed and dashed toward Lu Li. He was not far away from Lu Li. He reached Lu Li at once and swung his sword at Lu Li. Boom! Lu Li's injuries were so severe that he could not dodge even if he wanted to. He had to take the hit. This time, Guan Qianqiu did not use the same fundamental principle as before. Instead, the sword glowed in a yellowish color. It was heavy. Lu Li felt like a mountain had hit his head. Boom! Lu Li's injuries were so severe that he passed out. This time, Guan Qianqiu was teleported out. Seeing that Lu Li was teleported out, Guan Qianqiu grinned and shouted, "I give up as well." Buzzing. Chapter 2688. Lu Li was in a coma. As soon as he came out, he was taken away by the Celestial Emperor sect for treatment. The 7-colored glazed pagoda and Blood Fairy were teleported out. Blood Fairy was smart. She took the 7-colored glazed pagoda and controlled the Holy King's daughter to stay close to Lu Li. Guan Qianqiu was sent out and was treated as well. The arena was empty but nobody went in. They were all looking at Patriarch Gu. In addition to them, everyone was looking at Patriarch Gu, waiting for his judgment. Was Lu Li the winner? Patriarch Gu was struggling as well. After all, Lu Li and Guan Qianqiu were teleported out at almost the same time. Guan Qianqiu had admitted defeat. Who was the winner? If Lu Li had won, then Lu Li would make it to the next round. He turned to the 5 emperors. Emperor Hing thought about it and said, "How about we count Lu Li as the winner? After all, Guan Qianqiu has admitted defeat." Emperor Rui said at once, "I think so." Lu Li forced Guan Qianqiu to admit defeat with his own abilities. Even though he is in a coma, he has won. Emperor Heng and Emperor Rui found Lu Li pleasing to the eye, so they spoke up for him. Luli, at the peak of the fourth tribulation, could fight against the peak of the fifth tribulation. He was a promising seedling. With proper training, he might become a mainstay of the Celestial Emperor sect. Sovereign Wu sneered and said, "Gentlemen, isn't it too obvious that you're taking sides?" Luli was teleported out after he passed out. Guan Qianqiu admitted defeat after he was sure that Luli was teleported out. According to the rules, the first one to be teleported out is the loser. Since Luli passed out first, he must be eliminated. There is no doubt about this. If you insist on siding with Luli, then I will have to ask the Patriarch to make a ruling. Emperor Rui and Emperor Heng were embarrassed by Emperor Wu's words. It was just a chance to make it to the next round. How could Emperor Wu go against the rules? They were all emperors. If Emperor Wu showed some respect to Emperor Wu, he would show some respect to Emperor Wu. They were all leaders of the Celestial Emperor sect, but Emperor Wu did not show them any respect. They knew that Emperor Wu was obsessed with cultivation. That being said, Emperor Wu did not have to go so far just because of Luli. As a matter of fact, it was not entirely because Luli was an eyesore to Emperor Wu. More importantly, it was because of Guan Qianqiu. The martial emperor had some connections with Guan Qianqiu's family. Although his wife's surname was not Guan, she was an adopted daughter of the Guan family. Strictly speaking, Guan Qianqiu was his junior, and some people from the Guan family had sought out the martial emperor to ask him to take care of him. Now, he couldn't take care of Guan Qianqiu anymore. It was destined that Guan Qianqiu wouldn't make it to the top 10, so he had to vent his anger on Luli. According to the rules, Luli was supposed to be eliminated, so it was understandable that he insisted on this. The other two great emperors didn't say anything. Their silence actually indicated that they agreed with the martial emperor's words. Emperor Heng thought about it and said, "All right, let's do as martial emperor said. Both of them are eliminated. The martial arts competition will continue." As soon as Patriarch Gu announced the decision, the rest of the contestants were relieved. If Luli could make it to the top 10, then there would be one less spot. Now that both Luli and Guan Qianqiu were seriously injured, there would be two less powerful competitors and one more spot to make it to the top 10. How could they not be happy? The people outside began to curse. Many people placed their bets on Guan Qianqiu, and many others placed their bets on Luli. Now that both of them had no hope of making it to the top 10, their divine stones were thrown into the water again. Of course, there were some who were happy. They could make a lot of divine stones by placing their bets on Luli not to make it to the top 10. As soon as Patriarch Gu announced the result, it was as good as announcing the death sentence for Luli and Guan Qianqiu. Once the decision was made, nobody could change it. Those who were hoping that Luli would be the dark horse and make it to the top 10 were disappointed. The dark horse had to stop at the top 10. The martial arts competition went on. Soon, one person made it to the top 10. Those who came later were lucky. With two less powerful competitors, some powerful warriors took advantage of the situation. Before Luli and Guan Qianqiu could come back to their senses, the 7th, 8th, and 9th warriors had all made it to the next level. 3 hours later, Guan Qianqiu finally woke up. He checked with psychic power at once. It just so happened that the 10th person made it to the top 10. The recruitment ceremony had come to an end. The recruitment ceremony is officially over. The list of the top 10 is out. They are Wang Ningxue, Hu Shimeng. When Patriarch Gu finished reading the list, the 10 were overjoyed. Finally, they had become disciples of the Celestial Emperor sect. They had reached the top in one step. Joining the Celestial Emperor sect was equivalent to having a path to the heavens. As long as they worked hard, they would become powerful warriors for sure. They might even have the chance to become a supreme being that could look down upon the entire boundless ruins. After Patriarch Gu finished reading the names, he took out a booklet and said, "The 10 will become disciples of the Celestial Emperor sect directly." Now I will announce the list of registered disciples. There are 10 registered disciples with a 3-year trial period. If they perform well, it is not impossible for registered disciples to become official disciples. This time, the registered disciples are Guan Qianxiu, Lu Shanhe, Yang Wenla Lu Li. Guan Qianxiu smiled a bitter smile when he heard the list. He was the number 1 among the registered disciples, but it was meaningless. Being a registered disciple was not meaningful in itself. Years had proven that being a registered disciple was just a consolation prize. After the 3-year trial period, if they were lucky, one of them could become an official disciple. If they were unlucky, then none of the 10 would stay. Guan Qianxiu himself was one of the best of the younger generation in the boundless ruins of gods. He thought he was the most powerful in this recruitment ceremony. How could he become a registered disciple? Those who he thought were weaker than him had become official disciples. How could he put his face to this? At this moment, Guan Qianxiu even wanted to give up. He wanted to go back to his clan and cultivate. Even if he didn't join the Celestial Emperor sect, he could still make a name for himself and become one of the best in the boundless ruins of God. No. Guan Qianxiu shook his head. He looked at Lu Li in a pavilion not far away. He changed his mind when he saw Lu Li. He had decided to join the Celestial Emperor sect. He wanted to become a registered disciple for no other reason than to find a chance to kill Lu Li. If it were not for Lu Li, Guan Qianxiu wouldn't have gone through so many twists and turns in the semifinals. If he had a sovereign weapon, he would have passed directly. In the end, he was burned by Lu Li and lost all hope. This bastard that came out of nowhere had ruined his plans again and again. If he could not kill Lu Li, how could he let it go? Lu Li would definitely stay in the Celestial Emperor sect. If Guan Qianxiu refused to become a registered disciple, then it would be difficult to kill Lu Li. During the 3 years, they would have to go through many trials and there would be chances to kill Lu Li. Chapter 2689. It was 3 days later when Lu Li woke up. He felt pain all over his body. One of his arms had not grown back and his pellet was broken. First, he used psychic power to check. He found himself in a castle with the daughter of Saint King standing next to him. This place should be safe. Lu Li took some healing pellets and fell asleep. He slept for another 3 days. When he woke up, he felt much better. His arm had grown back and his wounds were healed. Of course, the pellet had not recovered yet. The pellet had to be made with super pellet. Could not grow back by itself. Lu Li was not in a hurry to make the pellet. Instead, he used psychic power to check the surroundings. He noticed 2 maids outside and transmitted his voice over. "Come in." A maid walked in. Lu Li asked, "Where are we?" "Young Master Lu, this is the ancient Jade Peak." The maid explained, "This is a peak in the Heaven Emperor universe. Patriarch Gu sent you here and asked us to take good care of you. She said that you can go to the Heaven Emperor Peak when you are healed." Heaven Emperor Universe? Lu Li was surprised. Then, he was delighted. "I have made it? I am an official disciple of the Heaven Emperor sect now?" "No." The maid was embarrassed. "Young master, you have been accepted as a registered disciple." Registered disciple? Lu Li put on a bitter smile. He remembered that he was knocked out by Guan Qianxiu. Usually, he would be teleported out and eliminated immediately after he passed out. In other words, he did not have 5 wins in a row, but only 4. It was understandable that he was accepted as a registered disciple instead of an official disciple. Registered disciple. This was a consolation prize which was not very meaningful. It would be lucky if 1 out of 10 registered disciples could become an official disciple. If they were unlucky, they could all be kicked out after 3 years. The Heaven Emperor sect was strict in accepting disciples. They would rather have nothing than have a shoddy quality. They would spend a huge amount of resources to train every official disciple. If nothing went wrong, they would become powerful warriors. At the very least, they could become emperor candidates. If they were lucky, they could even become emperor candidates. The Heaven Emperor sect would provide all their disciples with many resources which were not endless. Naturally, the Heaven Emperor sect would not waste resources on others. The nominal disciples were the losers and the products of elimination. No matter how strong you were or how talented you were, a loser would always be a loser. No one would care about a loser. The eyes of the big shots in the sect would always be on the official disciples. You can leave first. I'll rest for a while. This thought surprised Luli. He had come all the way to the Heaven Emperor sect and worked so hard. He was so close to his goal. However, in the end, he failed on the verge of success. All he got was a consolation prize. Staying in this celestial Dharch peak for 3 years, witnessing the strength of the number 1 sect in this celestial Dharch peak, and then being sent away sourly? This was not the ending he wanted. I was thinking too much. After a while, Luli put on a bitter smile. His own abilities were just so. It was lucky that he could make it to the finals and almost make it to the top 10. If it was anyone else, they might not even be able to enter the semifinals. He should be content. Luli had some special means, but his realm was his shortcoming. His foundation was weak as well. When he was at a lower realm, these might not be a problem. That being said, in front of a truly powerful warrior, these problems could be fatal. Luli's mind wandered for a while. He consumed some herbs and fell asleep again. This time, he slept for 3 days. When he woke up, his wounds were almost healed. The only thing left was the pellet. Luli's pellet was destroyed once before. He had some experience in this. He rummaged through the herbs in his interspatial ring and found some that could help in the formation of pellet. He didn't go to the celestial Dharch peak. He stayed in his room to cultivate. The priority was to repair the pellets and restore his abilities. Without divine energy, many skills could not be used. Not even sovereign weapons could be used. Since he had made pellets before, Luli was experienced. This time, the process was fast. In 7 or 8 days, Luli's pellet was made. The newly formed pellet contained no divine energy at all. All the divine energy that Luli had accumulated was gone. He stopped cultivating after 3 days of cultivation. "Please take me to the celestial Dharch peak," Luli said to the maid. She shook her head and said, "I am sorry, young master. The celestial Dharch peak is not a place for servants like us. There is a teleportation formation here. Activate it and you can go to the celestial Dharch peak directly." Okay. Luli didn't have so many concerns. He strode toward the teleportation formation outside. It was a simple one. He activated it easily. After a flash of white light, Luli arrived at the foot of a huge mountain. He stood in a plaza. The plaza was not large. There was a statue of an old man in a straw cape with a fishing rod in his hand. The statue was vivid like a real person. Luli looked toward the mountain. There were castles everywhere, but they were all small ones. They were scattered across the mountain like plum blossoms. The mountain was shrouded in mist. The xianqi in heaven and earth was rich. Therefore, the flowers and trees here were luxuriant. It was like a fairyland. There was no army in the plaza, only a pavilion. In the pavilion sat an old man who was playing a game of chess. He didn't even notice Luli's arrival. Luli dared not to be arrogant in a place like this. He walked over, bowed and said, "Greetings, Lord." The old man looked up at Luli, waved his hand and said, "Go up the mountain. You can only take the small path. Don't look around, don't probe, and don't walk around. Otherwise, don't blame me if you die. Go to the middle of the mountain and find the biggest castle. Patriarch Gu is there. Also, don't call me Lord. Just call me Ghost." "Thank you, Lord Ghost." Luli cupped his fists again. He looked at the mountain and tried to identify the small path. He remembered Ghost's words clearly. There were at least hundreds of castles in the mountain. Powerful warriors of the Heaven Emperor sect must be living there. Luli was only a registered disciple. He wouldn't even know how he died if he acted rashly. Luli walked along the small path. He didn't dare to look around, walk around, or use psychic power. He walked toward the middle of the mountain step by step. After a while, he passed by dozens of castles. None of them dared to look around. After a turn, he saw a castle right in front of him. Out of instinct, he looked over and saw an old man sitting under a tree. The old man had red hair, bulging eyes, and a beard. Even though he didn't show any energy, Luli could tell that he was a powerful warrior. Martial Emperor. Luli knew this man. He didn't know that Martial Emperor was living here. When Luli looked over, Martial Emperor happened to raise his head and made eye contact with Luli. Luli's heart skipped a beat. He had a bad feeling. "Punk, come here." Martial Emperor suddenly waved his hand. Luli had to force himself to walk over. When he arrived, Luli cupped his fists and said, "Greetings, Lord Martial Emperor. Are you healed? You have made the pellet. That is fast." Martial Emperor put on a smile. But it was ferocious and horrifying. He was like a strange uncle who saw a pretty girl. He said with a grin, "It just so happens that I need a servant. Go and tell Patriarch Gu that he can work for me for the next 3 years. Chapter 2690. Emperor Wu had always been prejudiced against Luli. It was not just because of Luli but also because of Emperor Rui. Emperor Wu and Emperor Rui never got along. Emperor Rui thought highly of Luli, so naturally, Emperor Wu did not like Luli. There was also the matter of Guan Qianqiu, which made Emperor Wu even more unhappy. Without a doubt, Emperor Wu had asked Luli to follow him. Nothing good would come out of it. There was a difference between an emperor accepting a personal disciple. Luli was only following Emperor Wu as a servant. Clearly, Emperor Wu was up to no good. Luli could tell that Emperor Wu was up to no good. But what could he do? How could he disobey Emperor Wu? Luli cupped his fists, embarrassed, and walked to the hillside. Soon, he found the biggest castle. It was easy to find. There was a plaza in front of the castle. Outside the castle, there were 2 beasts squatting. On the gate of the castle were the words, "Hall of Patriarchs." 2 warriors were standing guard outside. "Stop!" Luli walked over. The warrior stopped him. Luli cupped his fists and said, "I am Luli. I am here for Patriarch Gu." "Oh, you are a registered disciple this year, right?" One of the warriors waved his hand and said, "Come with me." The warrior showed Luli into the castle. There was a hall and 7 or 8 corridors. The warrior led Luli into a corridor, made several turns, and finally arrived at a hall. Patriarch Gu was here. Seeing Luli come in, he waved the warrior away. Luli bowed and said, "Greetings, Patriarch Gu. I am Luli. You are not a formal disciple, so you cannot call yourself one." Patriarch Gu corrected Luli in an old-fashioned way. Luli forced a smile. Patriarch Gu threw a jade talisman to him and said, "This is your jade talisman. Wait outside. Later, I will arrange a place for you. Cultivate and improve yourself during these 3 years. If you can pass the 3 tests, you will have the chance to become a formal disciple of the Heaven Emperor sect." 3 tests? Luli curled his lips, but he didn't go out. He said with a forced smile, "Patriarch Gu, on my way there, I passed by a castle. Emperor Wu is outside the castle. He said he needs a servant and asked me to follow him for 3 years. Martial Emperor? Patriarch Gu was taken aback. Then, he looked at Luli with pity, waved his hand and said, "Since Emperor Wu has spoken, then you can go with him for the next 3 years. Luli, I have a saying for you. Only those who go through hardships can rise to the top. Don't be afraid of the clouds covering your eyes. When the clouds disperse, you will see the moon. Lu Li's heart skipped a beat. Patriarch Gu's words made him feel even worse. If Patriarch Gu said so, then Lu Li would be tortured to death by a martial emperor. Lu Li was filled with anger. If martial emperor really dared to torture him, he didn't mind not being a registered disciple of the Heaven Emperor sect. But martial emperor wouldn't kill him for no reason. Lu Li left the hall. A lord was waiting for him outside. He handed an interspatial ring to Lu Li and said, "This is the benefit for registered disciples. You can come here to pick it up once a year. There are also the sect rules of our Heavenly Emperor sect inside. Read it carefully. If you violate the sect rules, you will be put to death immediately." With that said, the Lord left right away as if he was tired of talking to Lu Li. Lu Li had to put away the interspatial ring. He went down the mountain the way he came and went to the castle. Martial Emperor was still sitting under the tree outside the castle. Seeing Lu Li coming, Martial Emperor nodded and said, "Come with me." Martial Emperor went into the castle with Lu Li following him. There was a portal in the castle. Martial Emperor went in. Lu Li felt troubled. He made up his mind to follow Martial Emperor and disappeared into the castle. In another castle on the hillside, Emperor Rui and Emperor Heng were playing chess in the backyard. After Martial Emperor took Lu Li away, Emperor Heng said with a bitter smile, "Martial Emperor, you really do not wait for revenge overnight. Lu Li is going to suffer this time. Emperor Rui, why didn't you do something earlier and bring that punk here to follow you?" Emperor Rui smiled and said, "If I didn't do anything, the punk could have survived. Do you think he could have survived if he had followed me?" "That's true." Emperor Heng picked up his teacup and took a sip. Then, he said, "The martial emperor probably hates this brat to the bone. He doesn't even care about his face anymore. If you protect him, you will anger the martial emperor even more. At that time, he will think of ways to kill him." "You are right." Emperor Rui nodded and sighed. "You can be a thief for 1,000 days, but you cannot guard against a thief for 1,000 days. Can I protect that punk for a lifetime? He is just a registered disciple. Even if he is killed quietly, the sect will not say anything. At the end of the day, the Heaven Emperor sect belongs to the major families. How about we go head-to-head as well?" Emperor Heng thought about it and said, "I heard that Guan Qianxiu is close to Martial Emperor. If Martial Emperor doesn't respect us, we don't have to respect him. Just give that kid a little trouble, and it'll be enough to make him suffer a few pots." "I am not that bored." Emperor Rui shook his head and said, "Let's wait and see if Martial Emperor is going too far. If not, then I will let it go. For Lu Li, this will be a form of training. If he is going too far, then he is not giving me any face. At that time, I will either not make a move or slap that Guan clan's punk to death. I want to see what Martial Emperor can do to me." "You still have the same personality." Emperor Heng smiled and said, "Either you don't make a move or you make a move to your death. Leave no way out." Those of us who grew up in a poor family are basically like this. Emperor Rui revealed a trace of coldness in his eyes and said, "It is not that we don't want to leave a way out. Sometimes we have no way out. If we are not more ruthless to our enemies, we would have died 1,000 times." "That's true." After Emperor Heng placed a chess piece, he waved his hand and said, "Let's not talk about this. Let's talk about that precious disciple of yours. This last Ning Shui is a good seedling. I have not congratulated you on getting your beloved disciple. This lass is very intelligent. If she is properly nurtured, I think it will not be difficult for her to break through to the Dharch rank." "She is indeed a good seedling." Emperor Rui agreed and said, "Young, talented, intelligent, perceptive, and emotional quotient. There are no problems in all aspects. The only problem is that she is born in a rich family. She has not suffered since childhood, and has not experienced too many life and death situations. Therefore, I am not very optimistic about her. So what if she has broken through to the Arch rank? How strong can her combat power be? She has not suffered in the past, and has not experienced life and death battles. Now you can slowly nurture her. Emperor Heng did not deny it and said, "What you said, the descendants of the rich all have such shortcomings. However, the ones who control this world are still the descendants of the rich. The ones who have the strongest combat power and stand at the peak are also the descendants of the rich. Therefore, you should not think of the descendants of the rich as so weak. The fact that they can control this world shows that they are very clear about their own weaknesses and have their own ways. Perhaps." Chapter 2691. The base camp of the Celestial Emperor sect was not in the Celestial Emperor city, but in a small world. Through the refinement of many powerful saint emperors, this small world had become a land of treasures with many strange places. Yama Mountain was a strange place, one of the top 10 places in the Celestial Emperor realm. But for powerful warriors, it was a land of treasures. For average disciples, it was a land of despair. Clearly, Emperor Wu was up to no good by bringing Luli here. Even though he could not kill Luli, he would make Luli suffer for at least 3 years. After a flash of white light, Luli sensed something was wrong as well. This place was horrifying. Luli was teleported out. The first thing he saw was white thunderbolts falling from the sky like a waterfall. Half of the mountain was covered in thunderbolts, which was quite frightening. In addition to thunderbolts, there was a black haze floating in the air. Luli sensed fatal danger from the haze. He believed that if he were to get close to the haze, he would be in big trouble. "Stay close. Don't blame me if you die," Emperor Wu said coldly and then rushed forward. Luli hurried to keep up. This was not a joke. If he made the wrong move, his death would be in vain. Luli followed Emperor Wu into the mountain. Emperor Wu's movements were graceful. He floated around like a gust of wind. Luli sped up to the top of his speed, or else he could not keep up with Emperor Wu. The Yama mountain was large. Luli's psychic power seemed to be limited here. He could only reach a radius of 30 miles. The deeper they went into the mountain, the thicker the black haze was. It was so dark that it felt like it was not the human world but hell. 3 years in a place like this? Luli shuddered with fear. Yama, this was not the human world, but hell. Why did Emperor Wu choose a place like this to live? Or did he leave Luli here on purpose? After the time for half an incense stick to burn, Luli realized that there was no more path ahead. The black haze had covered up a large area in front of him. Luli could faintly see some blue light wandering in the black haze like ghosts. But he could not tell what they were. "Follow me," Emperor Wu said coldly. Then, he waved his hand and created a shield that enveloped Luli and himself. Emperor Wu walked in front and the shield pushed the dark fog away. After walking in the black fog for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the road ahead finally opened up and a valley appeared. There were divine inscriptions in this valley that blocked the black mist outside. There was also a black castle in the valley. White mist rose up from within, making the castle faintly discernible. It seemed like the martial emperor lived here. Emperor Wu poured out a ray of Xian energy. A small door appeared in the shield. He walked in with Luli and then deactivated the shield. As soon as Luli entered, he felt as if he had been thrown into an icehouse. His body was frozen, and even his eyebrows and beard were frozen. He couldn't even move. Seeing that he had stopped in place, Martial Emperor said coldly, "Get used to it first. You're too useless if you can't even stand this little chill. Later on, go to that small house and stay there. 5 days later, help me gather the divine materials. This old man wants to forge a weapon." With that said, Emperor Wu left. When Luli entered a castle, he said coldly, Don't go out. Don't blame me if you die. Emperor Wu went into the castle. Lu Li did not move. He sat on the ground and cultivated for a while, using divine energy to drive away the cold. It was too cold here, even colder than the cave of ice. Lu Li could not feel the cold in the cave of ice. But here, he could feel the coldness invading his soul. It was so cold that it reached his bones. Lu Li cultivated for an hour before he could get used to the coldness. He walked toward the cabin, shivering. The cabin was only 100 feet away. Lu Li would stop for a while. It took him the time for over a dozen breaths to get into the cabin. There was nothing inside. Lu Li asked Blood Fairy to set up a divine inscription at once. Blood Fairy came out and began to set up a divine inscription. However, Lu Li did not feel warm. He was still freezing cold. Blood Fairy said, "Master, it is so cold here because of the white mist. The mist has filled up the space. Therefore, it is useless to set up a divine inscription." "Then never mind." Lu Li waved his hand. "There are divine inscriptions in this valley. You can go and study them. But do not make any changes. You will not trigger the divine inscription. Do you understand?" "Yes," Blood Fairy replied. Then, she went underground to study the divine inscriptions. Lu Li continued to struggle against the coldness. If he could not find a way to get used to the coldness, he would not even be able to move. How could he help Emperor Wu? Should I try to absorb some of the coldness? Lu Li sat with his legs crossed. He used divine energy to absorb the coldness. His body was filled with coldness. It would be easier for him to get used to it. A moment later, he realized that he could not absorb the coldness. This was a headache. He thought for a while and then used the trace of the Great Path. Years ago, he used the trace of the Great Path to absorb the primordial chaos. He wanted to see if he could absorb the coldness. Yes. After he used the trace of the Great Path, he noticed that the coldness was being absorbed and gathered at his abdomen, the same as when he absorbed the primordial chaos. When the coldness entered his body, Lu Li noticed a problem. His body was completely frozen. When the coldness entered his body, he could not adapt to it. Instead, he felt even more uncomfortable. He had turned into an ice sculpture. He could not even move his fingers. "I need to find a way to absorb the coldness into my acupoints." Lu Li realized that there was only one way. Just like before, he could absorb the primordial chaos into his acupoint. In this way, not only could he solve the problem, but he could also strengthen his body. He calmed himself down and began to think. In 3 days, he had successfully absorbed the coldness into his acupoints and transformed it into a special kind of energy. When the coldness was absorbed, Lu Li could clearly feel his body was strengthening. He was overjoyed. After absorbing some of the coldness, he was not as afraid of the cold anymore. Clearly, he could stand it now. "Go on." Emperor Wu told Lu Li to go and find him in 5 days. Lu Li did not have time for that. He kept on absorbing the coldness. The more coldness he absorbed, the stronger his body would be. It also meant that he would be less afraid of the coldness. As he had expected, after another 2 days, Lu Li felt his body had improved. More importantly, he was not afraid of the coldness anymore. His movements were not affected, but his speed and abilities were still suppressed. He walked out and entered the castle where the martial emperor resided. Upon entering, he saw a large hall where the martial emperor resided. In the hall was a huge cauldron. Emperor Wu was sitting next to the cauldron, looking at a piece of paper with a frown. Lu Li's entrance startled Emperor Wu. Emperor Wu looked at Lu Li in surprise and asked, "How did you do it?" Lu Li blinked in confusion. Emperor Wu asked again, "How did you suppress the coldness here?" Emperor Wu gave Lu Li 5 days, but that was just a casual remark. As far as Emperor Wu was concerned, there was no way Lu Li could stand the coldness here, and Lu Li would have to beg Emperor Wu for help. However, Lu Li could resist the coldness here after 5 days of cultivation. Of course, Luli would not tell Emperor Wu about the trace of the great Tao. He explained, "Lord Emperor Wu, I have absorbed some coldness and I can stand it." Nonsense. Chapter 2692. The frigid air here was not average. It was the frigid air from the bottom of the Yama mountain, one of the most powerful ones in the endless ruins of divinity. The reason why there was so much frigid air in the valley was that Emperor Wu had someone build a divine pattern to absorb the frigid air from underground. The frigid air was powerful. Average warriors at the peak of the fourth tribulation would be frozen and seriously injured as soon as they came in. Lu Li's physical body was stronger, but he was already impressed that he could stand it. But Emperor Wu didn't expect that Lu Li could absorb it. This was no ordinary cold chi, but cold origin chi. Ordinary people wouldn't even be able to absorb it. Just absorbing it into their bodies would cause major problems. That was why Emperor Wu was so surprised. Lu Li touched his nose embarrassedly and said, "I just casually absorbed the cold air into my body and then spread the cold air around my body. Maybe it's because I cultivate a supreme divine body that I can absorb the cold air so easily?" Emperor Wu was confused. There were warriors cultivating supreme bodies in the endless ruins of divinity, but none of them achieved much. Some reached the Emperor realm, but none reached the Saint Emperor realm. Therefore, Emperor Wu didn't know much about the supreme body. He used psychic power to check Lu Li's body and murmured, "Freak." Buzzing, Emperor Wu didn't waste time. He took out a bead and said, "Take this bead and go out to collect materials. This book has all the materials that need to be collected and how to do it. You must collect them in 3 months or you will be punished according to the rules. When you go out, do not touch the places where thunderbolts are falling. If you are struck by thunderbolts, you will die for sure. This bead will protect you from the toxic fog. Do not break it. Off you go." Emperor Wu just gave Lu Li a book and a bead and left him alone. Lu Li walked out with the bead and the book. His face was clouded with anger. Clearly, Emperor Wu was torturing him. It was difficult to collect the materials in 3 months. Emperor Wu's statement of punishment was targeted at Lu Li. Lu Li had a book of rules, but he didn't have the time to read it. It was said that the Celestial Emperor sect had strict rules. If a martial emperor wanted to punish him, the punishment would definitely be very severe. Suffering was a small matter, but he was afraid that he would be imprisoned for 10,000 years. At that time, where would he go to seek justice? Lu Li went back to his cabin. The first thing he did was to flip through the booklet. The booklet had a clear record. All the materials were not only described in words, but there were also portraits. The quantity of the materials was clearly stated, including how to collect them. There were more than 30 types of divine materials in total. You didn't have a lot of them, and you would need dozens of portions of each type. According to common sense, it shouldn't be particularly difficult to collect, and it shouldn't be a problem to collect it within 3 months. That being said, Emperor Wu was clearly making things difficult for Lu Li. Therefore, Lu Li did not believe that he could finish the task so easily. He sat for a moment, then called Blood Fairy back. Then, he strode outside. Lu Li frowned as he approached the shield. He did not know how to open the shield. Should he ask Blood Fairy to do it by force? At that time, a martial emperor would definitely be alerted. "Master, just walk out of here," Blood Fairy replied. "This divine glyph is only used to protect us from the poisonous black mist. It won't affect us if we go out, but it will be troublesome to come in." "Oh, I see." Lu Li took out the cyan bead that martial emperor gave him. He poured in divine energy, and the bead glowed. A cyan shield came out and enveloped Lu Li. Lu Li stepped into the divine glyph and went through it easily. The shield blocked off the poisonous mist. Lu Li strode forward. In the time for one incense stick to burn, he was out of the poisonous mist. "Blood Fairy, I'll send you some information. Go underground and search for these divine materials." Luli sent the information of all the materials to Blood Fairy. She snuck out from Luli's body and went underground to investigate. Luli wandered around in a leisurely manner. Blood Fairy was the main force in the investigation. It would be inefficient for Luli to go alone. What was more, there were many poisonous mist and thunderbolts. It would be dangerous for Luli to wander around. Blood Fairy was a virtual body. She would be fine no matter how Luli wandered around. Master, there are materials to your left, Blood Fairy said after the time for half an incense stick to burn. Luli hurried to the left. Up ahead, there was a cloud of poisonous mist. Luli used the bead at once to build up a cyan shield. He did not know what the poisonous mist was, but not even martial emperors dared to touch it. How could Luli have the courage to do so? Dozens of miles later, Luli found where Blood Fairy was. There was indeed a material there, a type of red grass. There was a lot of it, enough for Luli's needs. Luli collected the grasses quickly. He collected hundreds of them easily, which was more than what a martial emperor needed. Luli was relieved to find a material so easily. In total, there were 36 kinds of materials. At this rate, he believed he could collect them all in a month. Luli asked Blood Fairy to continue exploring. After the time for one incense stick to burn, Blood Fairy found another kind of material. However, when Luli found it, he realized it was difficult to collect. There were thunderbolts around the material. An area with a radius of several miles was enveloped by thunderbolts. If Luli wanted to collect this material, he would have to go through the thunderbolts or else he would not be able to do so. Martial Emperor once told Luli not to touch the thunderbolts or he would die for sure. Therefore, Luli was scared. He did not know what to do. Luli tried to get close to the thunderbolt. Before he got close, he sensed a fatal danger. Those thunderbolts were stronger than all the ones he had encountered. He could not take the risk. Let's go. He told Blood Fairy to leave. He wanted to look elsewhere. What if there were such materials in other places? In that case, he would not have to take the risk. Blood Fairy wandered on. Luli found more and more materials. It was easy for him to collect them. Half a month had passed. Luli had collected more than 20 kinds of materials. Today, he stopped. He put on a bitter smile. Blood Fairy had found the rest of the materials. The problem was that the remaining materials were mainly concentrated in two places. One was in the thunderbolts and the other was in the small ponds. These were not regular ponds. The water in the ponds frightened Luli, even more so than the heaven water. Luli did not have the courage to go down and collect them. He still had 11 kinds of materials in the thunderbolts and in the pond. Even Martial Emperor said that he could not touch the thunderbolt. Luli believed he could not go down to the ponds. Otherwise, he would not be able to come back up. In other words, he had reached a dead end. Clearly, Martial Emperor was punishing him. He must know that many materials were in the thunderbolts and the ponds. Yet, Martial Emperor asked Luli to collect them on purpose and warned Luli not to touch the thunderbolt. In other words, Martial Emperor had given Luli an impossible task. If Luli could not complete the task, he would be punished according to the rules of the sect. In other words, Martial Emperor was going to punish Luli in a roundabout way. Luli took out the rules of the sect and read. His anger grew. According to the rules, if Luli could not complete the task given by Martial Emperor, he would be grounded for 3 months or expelled from the sect. Luli did not mind being expelled. After all, it was unlikely that a registered disciple could become a formal disciple. Luli was afraid that Martial Emperor would use his power to avenge a personal grudge and lock him up for 10,000 years. Yes. Chapter 2693. Luli stood at the foot of a mountain. The entire mountain was filled with thunderbolts. It was like a waterfall falling from the sky. It was a magnificent view. Luli stood at the foot of the mountain. He could feel the pressure from the thunderbolt. The thunderbolts were so strong that Luli was not sure if he could survive them. He had no other choice but to make up his mind. First, he told Blood Fairy to build a divine pattern at the foot of the mountain to see if she could use the divine pattern field to weaken the thunderbolt. Unfortunately, the field was smashed as soon as it was activated. It was not realistic to count on the divine pattern. Move! Luli took a deep breath and slowly walked up the mountain. He walked slowly and his body was tense. He had released Dragon Wrestler and Heaven Armor. Without the two skills, he would not have the courage to go up. 1,000 feet, 100 feet, 100 feet. The thunderbolts were right in front of him. Every thunderbolt contained an arc. Luli knew that as he moved forward, there would be more thunderbolts. The nearby ones would attack him as well. He pressed on. Just as he had expected, after a dozen steps, 2 thunderbolts came at him. Then, the 2 thunderbolts made a turn and came at him. He did not step back. He let the 2 thunderbolts entangle him. The moment the thunderbolts entangled him, he smelled burnt flesh. He felt pain all over his body. Without any hesitation, he rolled over and stepped back. He rolled for thousands of feet before the 2 bolts of lightning retracted. His entire body was charred and he was still trembling. His eyes were filled with pain and sadness. He could not stand the thunderbolt. Not only did the thunderbolts contain destructive force, but there was also a strange force that could destroy his life force. If he tried to hold on, he would soon become a dead body and be blasted into dust. 2 thunderbolts had almost wounded him. If he were to go in and collect materials, he would have to face thousands of thunderbolts. He would be turned into dust before he could collect any material. Luli sat up with his legs crossed and took out some elixirs to treat his wound. At the same time, he began to think. After recuperating for half a day, his injuries were more or less healed. However, he did not immediately take action. Instead, he continued to recuperate. A day later, he stood up with a determined look in his eyes. He continued to stride forward. This time, he took out the 7-colored glazed pagoda and placed it above his head. This was a sovereign weapon that had the reincarnation emperor's seal of law. Therefore, he believed that this sovereign weapon could not be destroyed. As long as the sovereign weapon could help him hold on for a while, he would be able to quickly collect the divine materials inside. He controlled the 7-colored glazed pagoda to become bigger. It floated above his head like a small mountain, covering the sky above his head. Once again, he arrived near the lightning and followed the 7-colored glazed pagoda. Swish, 3 bolts of lightning came, followed by more thunderbolts. What annoyed Luli was, the thunderbolts didn't go to the 7-colored glazed pagoda. Instead, they went around the 7-colored glazed pagoda to attack him directly. Once again, Luli rolled down. His body was charred again with black smoke coming out. Luli forced a smile. He had overthought. The thunderbolts would only attack living beings. Unless he went into the 7-colored glazed pagoda, the thunderbolts would come at him from all directions. He sat down to tend to his wounds. At the same time, he wondered if he could go into the 7-colored glazed pagoda. Could he fly to the peak and use the suction force of the 7-colored glazed pagoda to suck in the divine crystals? It was a good idea, but he was not sure if it could be carried out. A day later, Luli's wounds were healed again. He decided to give it a try. He went into the 7-colored glazed pagoda and flew toward the thunderbolt. The 7-colored glazed pagoda glowed in 7 colors. Mysterious runes wandered around and a faint glow surrounded the pagoda. The sovereign weapon spread out as it flew toward the thunderbolt. *T. As he approached the thunderbolts, Luli was dumbfounded. Several bolts of thunderbolts shot into the 7-colored glazed pagoda and then penetrated through, hitting him with unerring accuracy. The 7-colored glazed pagoda showed no reaction, as if the thunderbolts were invisible. "Little Lu, don't struggle. The blood-evil emperor couldn't stand it anymore," he said, Don't think about using your artifact. The thunderbolts here are like the chaotic thunder over there. As long as you get close, you will be hit no matter what you do. You have to take it head on. If it were up to you, just don't dodge. Let the thunderbolts hit you. You will not die. Luli had just flown the 7-colored glazed pagoda away when he heard the Blood Evil Emperor's words. He thought he had heard it wrong. He sat with his legs crossed and took some healing pellets before he replied, "Lord Evil Emperor, are you kidding me? It is just a few bolts of thunderbolts and I am already badly injured. If there are more thunderbolts, I will be blasted into ashes." "Have you forgotten that you have a relic?" The Blood Evil Emperor replied, "When your source of life energy is damaged to a certain extent, that thing will come to protect you. Thunderbolts can destroy as well as regenerate. In this way, your physical body can be improved quickly. Your physical body has reached the peak of the 5th tribulation. Without the thunderbolts in heaven and earth to refine your body, it will be too difficult for you to consume the elixir." "You mean?" Luli was taken aback. He asked, "Lord Evil Emperor, are you talking about the chains of order?" For a moment, Luli had forgotten about this miraculous item. Something like this had happened before. When his source of life energy was depleted to a certain extent, the chains of order would protect its owner. If the chains of order could keep his source of life energy from drying up, then he would not die. He could also refine his body with the help of thunderbolts and improve quickly. "Okay. When I am healed, I will have a try." The words of the Blood Evil Emperor had given Luli courage. It was also because the chains of order had protected its owner before. Luli sat down with his legs crossed to tend to his wounds. At the same time, he began to think about how he could absorb the energy of thunderbolts to improve his physical body if the chains of order were to protect him. A day later, Luli's wounds were healed. He flew out from the 7-colored glazed pagoda and dashed toward the thunderbolts with determination. This time, he went directly to the outer area where there were at least dozens of thunderbolts. If the chains of order were not there to protect its owner, he would die for sure. Boom, 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 boom. As soon as Luli dashed in, dozens of thunderbolts came at him. Luli's body was enveloped in a white glow. Countless thunderbolts entangled him. The overbearing energy contained in the thunderbolts began to destroy his source of life energy. Buzzing, just as Luli was about to pass out, a divine chain of order in one of his bones finally glowed. Luli's life force was recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was as if the glow from the divine chain of order was the best medicine in the world. Okay. Luli was in great pain. That being said, he didn't care about anything else. He sat on the ground with his legs crossed and used the trace of Tao to guide the energy from the thunderbolts to his acupoints. His acupoints absorbed the energy from the thunderbolts and grew stronger. Soon, surges of energy surged out from his acupoints to repair Luli's body. At the same time, more thunderbolts came down, tearing apart and destroying Luli's body bit by bit. Destruction, rebirth, destruction and rebirth. Chapter 2694. It had been a long time since Luli's physical body had been improved. At this level, it was too difficult to improve. Consuming regular elixirs was no different than consuming none. They could not improve his physical strength by much. Even if Luli were to search for thunderbolts and flames, it would be hard for him to improve. However, the thunderbolts here were so powerful that they could improve his physical body so quickly. At this moment, Luli even forgot to collect the materials. The improvement of his physical body was more important than anything else. He entered the state of illusion. While absorbing the energy of thunderbolts to improve his physical body, he began to observe the miraculous divine chains of order. He had been trying to control the chains. Unfortunately, he had not found a way after such a long time. Apart from the fact that the chains were inside and outside of his body, they were strange to him. At the moment, the chains were glowing. Luli wanted to take this chance to observe and see if he could find a way to control them. Once the chains could be put to use, Luli's abilities would soar. Time flew by. Soon, half a month had passed. Luli didn't even notice that the improvement of his physical body had slowed down. In merely half a month, his physical body had been improved by at least a dozen times. Previously, his physical body was as strong as a warrior at the peak of the fifth tribulation. Now, it was as strong as a lord of the sixth tribulation. If he were to use the dragon wrestling skill, his physical body would be 10 times stronger, and he would be as strong as a warrior at the middle stage of the sixth tribulation. He was only at the peak of the fourth tribulation, but his physical body was as strong as a warrior at the middle stage of the sixth tribulation. That was the advantage of cultivating an immortal body. If Luli's physical body could keep improving without making a breakthrough in his realm, then his physical body could be as strong as a quasi-emperor. Of course, the further he progressed, the more difficult it was to cultivate. Now, the improvement of his physical body was slowing down. He must have absorbed too much energy of thunderbolts, and his body had developed resistance. During the half a month, Luli made no progress with the chains of order. He didn't stop cultivating and kept on absorbing thunderbolt. Now, he could almost resist this lightning, and it was very difficult for lightning to cause too much damage to him. This was also the reason why the growth of his physical body had slowed down. The reason why his physical body could improve so quickly was that the thunderbolts were tearing apart his body and then regenerating it. That was how he could grow stronger. Now that it couldn't be destroyed, it naturally couldn't be reborn, and its growth would slow down. 3 days later, Luli opened his eyes. He strode into the center of thunderbolts. Thousands of thunderbolts whooshed down and surrounded him. However, they could not inflict serious damage on him, only minor injuries. Luli collected the materials quickly and left at once. He went to other areas with thunderbolt. There were still some materials there. Now that he could stand the thunderbolts, he must collect them as soon as possible. 2 days later, Luli had collected 7 kinds of materials in the area with thunderbolt. He only had 4 left to collect, and they were all in the pond. If he wanted to collect more, he must go to the pond. Only 1.5 months had passed. Luli still had 1.5 months. He was not in a hurry. He continued to refine his body in the thunderbolt. The improvement of his body was slow, but it was faster than consuming elixirs. Every day he stayed in the lightning was equivalent to refining a few hundred stalks of godly medicine. After another 5 days of cultivation, Luli's progress was even slower. Finally, he left for the pond. He walked into a small pond, and Blood Fairy followed him. The pond was small, only with a radius of 1,000 feet. It was not deep either. The deepest part of the pond was over 100 feet deep. At the bottom of the pond grew some purple aquatic plants, which was one of the materials needed by martial emperors. The water in the pool was not transparent, nor was it black. Instead, it was brown like blood, sticky and viscous. Luli looked into the distance. He could see bubbles popping up on the surface of the water. There was nothing in the pond, no beasts, no living creatures. Theoretically speaking, the water should not be dangerous. However, when Luli walked to the pond, he sensed a fatal danger from the depth of his soul. He believed that if he jumped in, he would turn into a skeleton immediately. Bang! Standing by the pond, Luli generated a handprint. If it were regular water, half of the water in the pond would evaporate. However, when Luli slapped down, nothing happened in the water. There weren't even any ripples. It didn't feel like a person, but more like an iron wall. Luli moved a boulder nearby and threw it into the pond. Luli thought there would be a splash, but the boulder dived in and then disappeared. The pond was still as an ancient well. There was not even a ripple. Luli tried many other ways. However, the pond was like a beast. Anything that entered the pond would disappear, and there would be no ripples in the pond. Luli wanted to let Holy King's daughter have a try, but he did not dare to do so now. What if Holy King's daughter was smashed into pieces as well? Luli used psychic power to ask Blood Evil Emperor, "Evil Emperor, you are experienced and knowledgeable. Do you know what this water is?" "There is no such water in the third heaven," the Blood Evil Emperor said, "but I've read an ancient book which recorded some strange stories about the fourth heaven. There seems to be a description of this water. If I'm not wrong, it should be called Schwangen Heavy Water. Profound Heavy Water." Luli curled his lips. The name was strange. He could not infer the nature of the water from the name. Luli asked, "Then, Evil Emperor, what is special about this water? How can we solve it?" "The special characteristic of this water is that it's heavy. A single drop of water is comparable to a mountain. This water is a supreme treasure for smithing. This water shouldn't be naturally here. It should be collected from other places by the supreme experts of the Heavenly Emperor sect and placed here for smithing. The water can cultivate some super powerful materials. The aquatic grasses in the water are such materials." "Heavy?" Luli was even more confused. He asked, "How come when I throw a boulder in, it disappears as soon as it goes in? Also, when I attack, how come there is no ripple in the water?" "That is simple," Blood Evil Emperor explained. "The water is actually moving. Every drop of water is moving. It's just that you cannot see it. Think about it. Every drop of water is as heavy as a mountain. When you throw a boulder in, you will be crushed by many mountains. You will be crushed, right? As for your attacks, the water is heavy. It can withstand your attacks easily. Also, the water is moving and passing on the force. Not even a lord's attack can make the water ripple, let alone you." Luli had an image in his mind. Many huge iron balls were gathered together and moving. Kid was patting on the iron balls. He was counting on the iron balls to keep vibrating. Every drop of water was as heavy as a mountain. They were moving and passing on the force. Many mountains were moving. Anything that entered the mountains would be crushed into dust. What should I do? Luli was troubled. He felt he could not solve the problem. If he could not get the materials, he would still be troubled by martial emperors. I don't have a solution. Chapter 2695. What else could Luli do? He had to experiment. He even took out a powerful weapon and put it into the water, but it was crushed into dust. In the end, he made up his mind. He used Dragon Wrestler and Heaven Armor and reached his hand into the water. However, as soon as his finger touched the profound heavy water, it was crushed. Luli's body was as strong as a warrior at the middle stage of the sixth tribulation after he used Dragon Wrestler. Yet, he could not stand the profound heavy water and was crushed into dust. Luli could not take the risk. He might not even be able to take out a sovereign weapon. If he flew in with the seven-colored glazed pagoda and the sovereign weapon was crushed as well, it would be a great loss. Half a day later, Luli came up with an idea. He said to Blood Fairy, "Blood Fairy, try to decipher the rune at the bottom of the pond. Then, try to build a similar rune to divert the water to the side." The water was heavy. If it were not for the divine pattern, the Yama mountain would have been covered in holes. The heavy water would have gone underground. Luli found out that there was a divine pattern at the bottom of the pond. Just as the Blood Emperor said, the heavy water was not naturally here. Powerful warriors of the Celestial Emperor sect moved it here from other places. Therefore, if Blood Fairy could crack the divine pattern and divert the water, Luli would be able to collect the materials at the bottom. Blood Fairy went to check at once. There was nothing Luli could do. He sat on the side and waited. Days passed by without any news from Blood Fairy. Luli decided to go to the nearby Thunderbolts to refine his body. After all, waiting here was pointless. Going to the thunderbolts could strengthen his body. Soon, several days had passed. There was still no news from Blood Fairy. Luli decided to just let it go. He had no other choice. If Blood Fairy could not crack the divine pattern, then he would have to go back and beg for forgiveness. By then, Martial Emperor would punish him however he wanted. Time flowed by. 2 days before the 3-month deadline, Blood Fairy finally transmitted her voice to Qin Wentian. Master, it's done. I can decipher this divine inscription. Give me half a day's time. I'll set up one nearby to prevent the profound heavy water from escaping. Luli nodded. The strange water must be the most precious treasure of the Heaven Emperor sect. If all the water were to seep into the ground and disappear, a martial emperor would tear him apart. Luli kept using psychic power to check on Blood Fairy while cultivating. Half a day later, Blood Fairy's voice came through. Master, everything is ready. Shall we begin? Blood Fairy had placed the glyphs below the original glyph. That way, when he broke through the glyphs, the heavy water would flow down, and the materials at the bottom of the pool would be easy to collect. Blood Fairy activated the divine inscriptions, then deciphered the divine inscriptions on the surface. The pool of water shook violently, and then, as if a hole had appeared, the profound heavy water rapidly flowed down. The water in the pool gradually decreased, and finally, all of it flowed into the ground, leaving behind a huge hole. Well done! Luli was overjoyed. He went to collect all the materials at once. Then, he waved his hand and said, Blood Fairy, hurry up and collect the remaining 3 materials. It's too late. The Blood Emperor said, Punk, you have lost track of time in cultivation. There is only 1 day left until the 3-month deadline. You should go back as soon as possible. I think. Martial Emperor will not only not punish you, but he will also see you in a different light. Only 1 day left? Luli was taken aback. He put away Blood Fairy and walked toward the valley. The Blood Evil Sovereign couldn't help but exclaim, Little brat Lu, you have to nurture this succubus of yours well. If she can advance 1 or 2 more times, she can study divine inscriptions for thousands or tens of thousands of years. By then, she will definitely become a Grandmaster Divine Inscriptions. Yes. Luli nodded. He made up his mind. If there was a chance, he would find more high-level materials and see if Blood Fairy could consume them. It would be perfect if she could evolve 1 or 2 more times. Soon, Luli arrived at the edge of the black fog. He took out that bead and snuck in. There was a shield outside the valley. This time, Luli could not go in. He had to attack to make the shield tremble. Buzzing, a moment later, the shield glowed. A small door appeared. Luli stepped through the door and emerged in the valley. As soon as he entered the valley, he noticed something. The cold air here could not harm him at all. His physical body had been strengthened. He could stand the cold air easily now. Luli gazed at the castle. After a moment, he made up his mind and walked toward the castle. As soon as he stepped into the castle, he noticed a foul atmosphere. Martial Emperor was bending over and staring at the stove. His robe and beard were covered in soot. His face was black as well. He did not even look at Luli. He was staring into the stove. Luli did not dare to disturb Martial Emperor. He had to wait. 2 hours later, the fire in the stove died down. Martial Emperor opened the stove and took a look. His face darkened and he began to curse. At this moment, the feeling that the Martial Emperor gave Luli was not that of a supreme warrior, but a master of artifact forging, the kind with an eccentric temper. After a while of cursing, Martial Emperor turned to Luli. He was even more upset. He glared at Luli and said, What are you waiting for? Have you finished what I told you? Luli's heart was weighed down. Martial Emperor must have failed. He must be in a bad mood. Would Martial Emperor kill Luli in a fit of anger because he did not finish the task? But Luli was angry at the thought that he could not finish the task. He had done so much. If Martial Emperor still wanted to make trouble for him, then Luli would not show mercy. At least, he would die with dignity. Luli took out his interspatial ring, handed it over with respect and said, "Lord Martial Emperor, 3 months is not enough. Therefore, there are still 3 kinds of materials that I have yet to collect. Please give me 10 more days. I will finish all the materials and skills." "There are 3 more?" Martial Emperor's eyes popped out. He took over the interspatial ring and took a look. He was even more shocked. He turned to Luli and was surprised again. "How come your physical body has improved so much in just a couple of months?" Luli asked. Luli touched his head and said, "There are many materials in the area covered by thunderbolts. I had no choice but to rush in. I was almost killed. Luckily, I survived. My body absorbed some energy from the thunderbolts, so I have improved a bit." "You can stand the thunderbolts?" Martial Emperor found it hard to believe. Then, he remembered something and asked, "What about the profound water of heavy water? Don't tell me that you are still alive and kicking in the profound water of heavy water?" "Not really." Luli touched his nose embarrassedly and said, "I cracked the runes at the bottom of the pond and diverted the water away. That was how I was able to collect one kind of material. But there is not enough time for me to collect the rest of the materials." "What?" Martial Emperor's eyes were wide open. He dashed over, grabbed Luli by the neck and lifted him up. Martial Emperor bellowed, "You said you let the profound water of heavy water go? Punk, do you know how precious that water is? 1 drop of it is equal to 1 of your lives. If the water ran away, killing you 10,000 times would not be enough." Chapter 2696. A great emperor and a powerful one at that. How terrifying was it to unleash his killing intent. At this moment, Luli felt like he couldn't breathe and his blood was frozen. Luli said at once, "Lord Emperor Wu, the heavy water did not seep away. I built a divine pattern to keep the heavy water." Emperor Wu threw Luli to the side and dashed out like a gust of wind. After the time for 1 incense stick to burn, he came back. He stared at Luli with mixed feelings and asked, "You know about divine patterns?" Luli nodded and said, "A little." "You call this a little bit?" Emperor Wu glared at Luli and said, "That divine pattern was built by a powerful warrior in our sect. You can crack it easily. You call that a little? Excessive modesty is arrogance. I hate hypocrites the most." Luli touched his nose and said nothing else. Emperor Wu thought for a while and said, "There are 3 more materials that you haven't collected, but you have accomplished your task. You don't have to collect the other 3. We still have some in storage. Stay here for half a month. After that, you can help me with the artifact forging and go out." Emperor Wu waved his hand. Luli walked out and went back to the cabin. Luli was relieved. The blood-evil emperor was right. Instead of punishing Luli, Emperor Wu had changed his opinion of Luli. Luli sat for a while. He had nothing to do, so he decided to absorb the cold air outside. The cold air could strengthen his body. There was cold air coming out from underground. It would be a waste not to absorb it. While Luli was absorbing the cold air, he was consolidating the soul skill he learned. This skill could condense soul energy into wind and kill people from thousands of miles away. It was domineering. Even though he had learned it, he still needed to consolidate it. Half a month later, the wind soul was consolidated and he had absorbed a lot of cold air. Luli's body was further improved. But not by much, only 2 or 3 times. For his current physical strength, 2 or 3 times was equal to consuming tens of thousands of elixirs. Emperor Wu was reading an ancient book in the hall. He threw a casual look at Luli and was surprised again. "Punk, your physical strength has improved again? 2 or 3 times." This time, Luli did not pretend to be modest. He explained, "I have absorbed some cold air and my physical strength has improved. Freak. Emperor Wu pouted. He threw some books to Luli and said, "Take a look and learn all the information. In a couple of days, help me forge artifacts. If something goes wrong and I lose control of myself in a fit of anger, you will be in danger." Luli took over the books at once. He was relieved. They were all books on forging artifacts with introductions of various materials and some basic knowledge about forging artifacts. Naturally, the methods of forging artifacts in the Endless Ruins were much more complicated and mysterious than those in the Divinity. However, Luli had a certain foundation in forging artifacts, so he could understand them at first glance. Of course, he did not dare to be careless. A few days ago, a martial emperor had failed to refine a weapon. That appearance was very frightening. If he were to fail because of his mistake, he would really be torn apart. Luli studied for several days and gained a clear understanding of all the materials. He also memorized the steps and tricks of forging artifacts. Luli was curious about what kind of weapon Martial Emperor was going to make. Could he be forging a Monarch weapon? Luli had a Monarch weapon, and he had seen many. But he did not know how to forge a Monarch weapon. Emperor Wu seemed to be ready as well. He looked at Luli and asked, "Are you done? Are there any problems?" "I don't think so," Luli replied. "What do you mean by I don't think so?" Emperor Wu glared at Luli and yelled, "Yes means yes and no means no. Let me tell you, if something goes wrong, you will lose your life." What else could Luli say? He made up his mind and said, "Lord, I am fine." "Okay." Emperor Wu waved his hand and said, "Go to the side hall over there and take out 100 purple phosphorus stones, 100 pieces of mixed flame stones, 100 portions of whiskey powder, 100 Emperor Wu listed dozens of materials in one go." Luli went to the side hall and took them out soon. There was nothing wrong. When he was forging artifacts, these were all basic skills. Naturally, he would not have any problems with this. Emperor Wu nodded and then patted that huge tripod stove. The stove glowed. Emperor Wu looked at Luli and said, "Put 3 purple phosphorus stones, 3 pieces of mixed flame stones, and 3 portions of whiskey powder in there." Luli took out the materials at once and put them into the stove accurately. His movements were natural, and he did not seem to be in a hurry. Emperor Wu raised his eyebrows and asked, "Have you ever forged artifacts before?" Luli answered honestly, "Yes, I learned it for a while, but I only know a little." Emperor Wu answered indifferently and began to work on the artifact. He asked Luli to put in more materials while he engraved various patterns and marks of laws into the embryo. A piece of meteoric iron. 3 pieces of half-moon stone. Heat up the stove. Activate the patterns and guide the frigid energy. It is about to take shape. Okay, turn off the patterns at once. There is too much frigid energy. Emperor Wu gave orders and Luli carried them out with precision. Emperor Wu was sweating and so were Luli's palms. This was a matter of his life. If something went wrong, who knew what Emperor Wu would do in a fit of rage? Emperor Wu worked from morning to midnight. Finally, he stopped. He waved his hand to let Luli rest while he kept an eye on the stove. He kept an eye on it until midnight. The next day, Emperor Wu shouted again for Luli to cooperate. "Open!" In the afternoon, Emperor Wu patted the stove and the lid was opened. A glaring sword flew out. Emperor Wu grabbed it with one hand. He took a look and laughed, "Ha ha ha ha, good. I have made it." Luli was taken aback after a few glances. Sure enough, Emperor Wu was making a weapon. This weapon was similar to a sovereign weapon but much weaker. It must be nurtured by a warrior at the great Emperor realm for many years and refined for many years. The martial emperor brandished the divine weapon a few times before nodding his head in satisfaction. "Brat, you've done well this time. Your previous mistakes are written off. This old man is very clear about gratitude and grudges. I will not target you in the future. In the next couple of years, help me forge artifacts and cultivate. Try to pass the assessment and become an official disciple of the Heaven Emperor sect. Thank you, Lord Emperor Wu. Lu Li bowed and breathed in relief. This Emperor Wu was a straightforward man. He would speak his mind and would not hold back. Since this man had spoken, he would not deliberately make things difficult for Lu Li. Lu Li's life in the future would be easier. Assessment. Lu Li felt troubled at the thought of the assessment. It was said that the assessment was harsh. Usually, only 1 out of 10 could stay. Sometimes, none could stay. 3 years was a short time. Could Lu Li's abilities improve by leaps and bounds? Could he pass the assessment? Tribulation, the fifth one. Chapter 2697. Tribulation. Lu Li was troubled. He had the help of Tianya for the first 2 tribulations. The 5th one was beyond the help of others, not even emperors. Lu Li had to rely on himself. But he was not sure that he could survive the tribulation, especially the tribulation of mind and soul. Over the years, he had become more and more stable, and he had experienced many tribulation of mind and soul. But still, he was not sure. He had always had a strong inner demon. He had too many things to worry about and too many people to care about. Lu Ling was taken to the Holy Maiden sect, and her family in the second heaven was in the dark. Usually, the inner demon was not a big deal. But the tribulation could cost him his life. That being said, as the Blood Emperor said, if he wanted to improve his abilities quickly, tribulation was a shortcut. He had no support in the Celestial Emperor sect, but Guan Qianxiu and the others were connected to some powerful warriors in the Celestial Emperor sect. How could he stand out and be chosen by the Celestial Emperor sect if he did not rely on his abilities? What was more, his foundation was not stable. He could not compare with the disciples of the famous sections. This foundation would reveal its flaws during the tribulation, and he could die easily. Never mind. Tribulation. Lu Li made up his mind. He had 2 years to go. During this time, he would try to stabilize his foundation. At the same time, he would use thunderbolts and cold air to refine his body, cultivate his soul, and improve his abilities. For the rest of the time, he did the same. The cold air here was endless, and he could absorb it continuously. He would cultivate divine energy and soul and study the marks he recorded in the Heaven Path realm from time to time. 3 months later, Emperor Wu sent Lu Li out to collect materials again. But he warned Lu Li not to touch the profound water again. Emperor Wu was afraid that Lu Li would let go of the profound water. If the profound water flowed underground, it would be difficult to get it back. Lu Li spent a month collecting all the materials and used thunderbolts to refine his body for half a month. When he came back, Emperor Wu was ready to make more sovereign weapons. He should be the master craftsman of the Celestial Emperor sect. He must have been the one who made all the sovereign weapons in the Celestial Emperor sect. Take a look at this booklet. This time, the relic weapon I am going to make is more difficult. Take a closer look. Emperor Wu gave Lu Li a booklet. Lu Li read it carefully. After a day, Emperor Wu waved his hand and said, "Go and pick someone up. She is here to deliver some rare materials. I have run out of them." Lu Li hurried out and picked up a person at the foot of the Yama mountain. Lu Li knew this person. It was Wang Ningxue, who was going to the tournament with him. Lu Li took a look from the distance and said in surprise, "Lady Ningxue, you have reached the 6th tribulation?" Wang Ningxue felt a sense of closeness when she saw Lu Li. She blushed and said, "Yes, I have Emperor Rui as my master. With my master's guidance and help, I have successfully passed the 6th heaven tribulation. And I was already half a step away from the 6th tribulation realm. After joining the Celestial Dharch sect, I have finally crossed this threshold. Congratulations, congratulations!" Lu Li cupped his fists. He was envious. As the personal disciple of Emperor Rui, Wang Ningxue would be heavily nurtured by the Heaven Emperor sect. He had only joined the Heavenly Emperor sect for a few months, and he had already broken through to the sixth tribulation. His future was limitless. Lu Li, how have you been these months? Wang Ningxue asked as she followed Lu Li up the mountain. She was worried. Emperor Wu was famous for his short temper in the Celestial Larch sect. I am fine, Lu Li said casually. He didn't continue the topic. He asked another question. Lady Ningxue, where did you take the tribulation? Is there a platform here? I want to take the tribulation as well. Can I go there? There is a platform. Wang Ningxue nodded. Then, she said with embarrassment, the platform here is strong. It can weaken the heaven tribulation by 30%. As for whether you can take the tribulation there, I don't know. After all, Wang Ningxue didn't finish her sentence. Lu Li understood. There was a huge gap between their identities. One was a formal disciple, the personal disciple of Emperor Rui, while the other was a registered disciple who was working as a servant for Emperor Wu. The difference in status was huge. Lu Li brought Wang Ningxue into the castle. Emperor Wu nodded to her and said, "Girl, you are talented. You have reached the sixth tribulation so soon. But you need to take part in more battles of life and death. Otherwise, your realm will be useless no matter how high you are. Go back and tell Emperor Rui that he will arrange for you to take part in more battles. Don't cultivate in the Celestial Emperor universe all day." Yes. Thank you, Lord Emperor Wu. Wang Ningxue bowed and handed over the materials. Emperor Wu waved his hand and said, "Lu, send the girl down the mountain." Lu Li left with Wang Ningxue. Along the way, Wang Ningxue wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. When they were at the foot of the mountain, she couldn't help but say, "Lu Li, I think Emperor Wu is nice to you. Guan Qianqiu and Emperor Wu are relatives. I was worried that Emperor Wu would make things difficult for you. I didn't expect that he would call you Lu. He must like you." Lu Li didn't know about the relationship between Emperor Wu and Guan Qianqiu. It turned out that Emperor Wu was against him because of Guan Qianqiu. Luckily, Lu Li had passed the test. Otherwise, he would either be locked up or killed. Where is Guan Qianqiu? A glint of coldness rose in Lu Li's eyes. Guan Qianqiu was a registered disciple as well. He used to be Lu Li's rival, and he would be in the future. Lu Li wanted to get some information. He is helping out at the Pavilion of Martial Arts. Wang Ningxue pouted and replied, "The Guan family has some influence in the Celestial Emperor sect. They have helped him get a good position. The Pavilion of Martial Arts is for formal disciples and powerful warriors to cultivate. Guan Qianqiu can learn a lot from there. He said that he is helping out, but he is actually training him in disguise. I think he will reach the sixth tribulation in 3 years. Once he does, he will be kept by the Celestial Emperor sect and become a formal disciple." What? Lu Li felt the pressure. Guan Qianqiu was only a registered disciple, but he was growing fast with the help of the Guan family. He was also enjoying the resources of the Celestial Emperor sect. He was already one step away from the sixth tribulation. It was highly possible that he could reach the sixth tribulation. Once he became a lord, it would be a different world. Guan Qianqiu had a sovereign weapon. How could Lu Li compete with Guan Qianqiu? Guan Qianqiu would try his best to kill Lu Li, let alone compete with him. At the recruitment ceremony, Guan Qianqiu wanted to kill Lu Li. Because Lu Li prevented Guan Qianqiu from reaching the next rank, Guan Qianqiu must hate Lu Li's gut. "I will leave now. Lu Li, good luck." Wang Ningxue bowed and flew away. Lu Li sighed. He turned around and walked back up the mountain. The glow in his eyes was becoming more and more determined. He must survive the fifth tribulation, or else he would not be able to compete with Guan Qianqiu. If he could not become a formal disciple after 3 years, he would be banished from the Celestial Emperor sect. Powerful warriors of the Guan family would secretly take action as well. The endless ruins of gods was vast, but there was no place for him. By then, he would be doomed. Chapter 2698. Cultivation, gathering divine materials, assisting in the refinement of artifacts, and then cultivation. Luli repeated this life. Ever since he went to the Yama mountain, he never came out again. The Heaven Emperor universe was vast with many strange places. It was a pity that Luli had no chance to go to any of them. Soon, 2 years had passed. Luli had been cultivating for 2 years. Apart from the improvement of his physical body and the stabilization of his realm, he didn't make much progress. The only thing that made a difference was that Luli was recognized by Emperor Wu. Luli carried out everything Emperor Wu asked him to do perfectly. Emperor Wu could not find any fault with him. Emperor Wu rarely talked to Luli. Apart from forging artifacts, Luli was busy with other things. Over the past 2 years, Luli had made 9 relic weapons. Luli wondered if they were sovereign weapons. Luli believed they were only half-finished products. Otherwise, if sovereign weapons could be made so easily, the streets would be filled with them. At least, every disciple of the Heaven Emperor sect would have one. Since Emperor Wu didn't talk to Luli, Luli didn't ask. He rarely communicated with Emperor Wu. But Luli could tell from Emperor Wu's eyes that he approved of him. At first, Emperor Wu didn't just look at Luli with displeasure, there was also killing intent. Today, Luli helped Emperor Wu make another relic weapon. Normally, Emperor Wu would tell Luli to take a rest. But today, Emperor Wu waved his hand and said, "Little Lu, we have half a year to go, right?" Luli was surprised. Why did Emperor Wu mention this? Luli answered honestly, "Yes, Lord Emperor Wu. I have 5.5 months. Emperor Wu waved his hand and said, "Okay. From today on, you don't have to work. Focus on cultivation and prepare for the test." "Thank you, Emperor Wu." Luli bowed at once. Emperor Wu took out a jade talisman from his interspatial ring and said, "I know you have been longing for the 5th heavenly tribulation. Take my token and go to Patriarch Gu. Ask him to arrange it for you. Personally, I don't recommend you to go. But I don't think I can persuade you otherwise. Here are some words for you. Follow your heart and follow nature." Luli bowed again. This time, he was truly grateful. The martial emperor had disregarded their former enmity and taken the initiative to remind him. This was already a favor. Even though martial Emperor Wu had tried to harm Luli, he was a man of integrity and had a clear distinction between love and hate. Luli enjoyed dealing with people like him. Luli left and went back to the cabin. He remembered the 8 words that martial Emperor Wu gave him. After a while, he sat down with his legs crossed to cultivate again. He cultivated for 2 months. Apart from absorbing the cold air and stabilizing his realm, Luli had been thinking about how to pacify his inner demons and make his mind impeccable. A month later, he came out of seclusion and walked down Yama Mountain. There was a teleportation gate at the foot of the mountain, and as soon as he stepped in, he arrived outside the Elder Hall. At this moment, a group of disciples walked out of the Elder's Hall. There were both men and women. The men looked impressive, and the women were beautiful and noble. All of them wore a 6-pointed star symbol on their chests. This was the symbol of an official disciple. Luli didn't have the habit of wearing brocade robes, so he wore an average cyan robe. He didn't dress himself up. His hair was a bit messy. Compared to these people, he looked like a beggar. As soon as Luli came out, he walked toward the Elder Hall without looking at these people. However, when he was about to step into the hall, a man in front of him blocked his way. Luli looked up and saw a young man at the peak of the 5th tribulation staring at him coldly. Luli thought about it, cupped his fists and said, "Sir, why are you stopping me? What can I do for you? What can I do for you?" The young warrior was arrogant. He said coldly, "You are a registered disciple, right? Do you think you can come and go as you please? Can you afford to offend a patriarch? Lu Li touched his nose speechlessly. He didn't want to waste time. He took out the token of Martial Emperor Wu and said, I am here under orders. Are you going to stop me? The young man took a look at the token. He was embarrassed. He glared at Lu Li and said, You are a registered disciple. Shouldn't you bow to us? Don't you know the rules? Fine. Lu Li bowed, cupped his fists and said, Nice to meet you, brothers and sisters. PFF, how dare you? The young man sneered. You are a registered disciple. How dare you call us brothers and sisters? Also, the assessment is coming soon. Maybe you won't even be a registered disciple anymore. Lu Li didn't want to waste time with someone like this. He said nothing. He cupped his fists and walked straight in. The young man flew into a rage. However, Lu Li had gone in. He didn't dare to make a scene in the elder hall. The young man thought about it and said, You are Lu Li, right? You can be arrogant now. But if I don't make you cry during the assessment, I will not be Chu Yen. Lu Li walked into the elder hall and met Patriarch Gu easily with the Martial Emperor Wu's token. After he stated his purpose, Patriarch Gu generously asked someone to show him to the tribulation platform. Registered disciples were not allowed to use the tribulation platform. However, since Martial Emperor Wu had spoken, Patriarch Gu wouldn't say much. What confused Patriarch Gu was, didn't Sovereign Wu find Lu Li an eyesore? Why did he speak up for Lu Li? Lu Li was shown to the tribulation platform by a deacon. It was on a mountain. There was more than one tribulation platform. There were 3. So many people? Has the news of my tribulation been spread out? But it doesn't make sense for so many people to come and watch. After Lu Li teleported to the peak, he saw at least dozens of people gathered here. Wang Ningxue and Hu Shimeng were still here. Some of them were official disciples and some registered disciples were here as well. Wait. Soon, Lu Li understood. There was another person standing on the other tribulation platform, a handsome young man with a sword in his hand. Who else could it be other than Guan Qianxiu? Guan Qianxiu was undergoing tribulation as well, and it was about to begin. Those people were here to watch Guan Qianxiu's tribulation. There were 2 quasi-emperors among them. Clearly, they were patriarchs of the Heaven Emperor sect. They must be from the Guan family. Swish, lightning flashed in the sky. Guan Qianxiu had begun the tribulation. Lu Li's mind was weighed down as well. This was Guan Qianxiu's 6th tribulation. Once he made it, he would be a lord. How could Guan Qianxiu compete with a lord if they were to take the test together? Well, Lu Li? Wang Ningxue noticed Lu Li. She shouted in surprise. Hu Shimeng turned to Lu Li at once. He dashed to Lu Li's side, patted Lu Li's shoulder and said, Ha ha ha, brother Lu Li, I finally get to meet you. Many people looked over. Guan Qianxiu, who was on the tribulation platform, noticed this as well. Guan Qianxiu glanced over. His eyes were filled with hatred and resentment. He did not look for long. Soon, he closed his eyes because the tribulation had begun. Lu Li, Hu Shimeng, and Wang Ningxue exchanged some pleasantries. Then, he turned to Guan Qianxiu and asked, Lady Ningxue, how is the success rate for Guan Qianxiu this time? Very high. Wang Ningxue replied with certainty. Guan Qianxiu has made great progress recently. More importantly, his family has given him a top-level tribulation pellet. This pellet is as valuable as half a sovereign weapon. If everything goes well, Guan Qianxiu can pass the 6th tribulation easily. I see. Lu Li's mind was weighed down. Wang Ningxue asked with curiosity, Are you here to watch Guan Qianxiu as well? Chapter 2699. You are here for the heavenly tribulation as well? Wang Ningxue rolled her eyes. What a coincidence. The 2 enemies were going through the heavenly tribulation at the same time. one for the 5th time and the other for the 6th time. They were both here to improve their abilities and to prepare for the upcoming sect test. Good job! Lu Li said the last sentence in a low voice. Hu Shimeng heard it, but he didn't mind. He patted Lu Li's shoulder and said, Brother Lu, go ahead. I will support you. You must get through this heavenly tribulation and try to be the champion in the sect test. Let that punk of the Guan family die of anger. Hu Shimeng didn't send a message. He just said it out loud. His voice was so loud that everyone nearby could hear him. The 2 patriarchs of the Guan family pulled a long face. They looked at Lu Li and Hu Shimeng with hostility. Hu Shimeng was not afraid of them. Hu family had people in the Celestial Emperor sect, including a warrior of the Great Emperor realm. Hu Shimeng threw a provocative look at the patriarch of the Guan family. He even took out a pellet and said, Brother Lu, I was going to use this pellet for the heavenly tribulation. You can take it first. It is not as good as the tribulation pellet of the Guan family, but it will work. How can I do that? Lu Li was touched. He kept declining, but Hu Shimeng said carelessly, Don't worry. The Hu family is not weaker than the Guan family. Now that I am a disciple of the Celestial Emperor sect, my family will send me the best tribulation pellet. I don't need it. Lu Li didn't refuse anymore. He said gratefully, Brother Hu, thank you. We are brothers. Why are you saying this? Hu Shimeng glared at Lu Li and said, If it were not for you, I would not have become a disciple of the Celestial Emperor sect. Now, get ready for the heavenly tribulation. If you had succeeded earlier than Guan Qianqiu, he would have been so angry that he would spit out blood. By then, he might have died. The 2 patriarchs of the Guan family were enraged. They glared at Hu Shimeng. Lu Li had an idea. If Lu Li was faster than Guan Qianqiu, then Guan Qianqiu might lose his mind and fail the heavenly tribulation. In that case, Guan Qianqiu would be seriously injured even if he survived. In that case, Guan Qianqiu would have one less enemy. Lu Li didn't care anymore. He rushed to a platform for tribulation and cupped his fists to the deacon. The deacon went to arrange for the platform to be activated at once. Lu Li's realm had been stabilized for many years. The 5th heaven tribulation was not a problem for him. The only thing he was worried about was the tribulation of mind and soul. Now that he had the pellet, he was more confident. Several disciples and nominal disciples nearby became excited. They had originally come to watch the show and learn from it. However, he did not expect that he would be able to witness 2 people going through the heavenly tribulation at the same time. This was quite an interesting scene. Moreover, the 2 of them were enemies, so it was a bit like a competition to see who could pass the heavenly tribulation first. On the other side, Guan Qianqiu had already begun. Lightning struck down from the 9 heavens. The 6th heavenly tribulation was extremely tyrannical. Lightning bolts thicker than a person struck down on Guan Qianqiu. Guan Qianqiu was truly powerful. He was able to resist the lightning, and although his body trembled, there was no sign of pain on his face. Buzz, after a while, Lu Li's platform lit up. Unlike Guan Qianqiu, Lu Li sat on the ground with his legs crossed, waiting for the heavens tribulation. The 5th heavens tribulation was different from the previous ones. There was an additional heavens punishment. But Lu Li was not afraid because his physical body was too strong. The dragon wrestling skill was comparable to the middle stage of the 6th tribulation. The heavens punishment could not kill him. As long as he could survive the tribulation of mind and soul, nothing else mattered. Swish, after Guan Qianqiu was struck 9 times, Lu Li's tribulation began. Bolts of lightning whooshed down like ferocious snakes, trying to swallow Lu Li alive. Wang Ningxue and Hu Shimeng were nervous. Both of them were indebted to Lu Li. Therefore, they were concerned whether Lu Li could survive the heavens tribulation or not. Boom, boom, boom. Dozens of thunderbolts landed on Lu Li's body but did not cause him any harm. Instead, the thunderbolts vanished as soon as they entered Lu Li's body. Lu Li's small body was like an ocean that could swallow all the thunderbolts. Wang Ningxue was surprised. Hu Shiming's mouth was wide open as well. Then, he laughed out loud and said, "My brother is really something. This heaven's tribulation is like a game to him." Naturally, the previous thunderbolts would not do any harm to Lu Li. He could survive the horrifying thunderbolts at the Yama mountain. This was nothing to him. All the thunderbolts were absorbed by Lu Li to enhance the energy in his acupoint. Thunderbolts came down one after another. Lu Li remained unmoved. Guan Qianxiu, on the other hand, had begun the divine fire tribulation. Clearly, he was prepared. The divine fire tribulation could not hurt him. His skin was only charred. His eyes were closed, but he could sense the thunderbolts coming from the tribulation platform nearby. The divine fire tribulation was not dangerous at the moment. Guan Qianxiu used psychic power to check. "This bastard is going through a heaven's tribulation as well?" Guan Qianxiu pulled a long face. He was even more upset when he saw that Lu Li could survive the thunderbolts with ease. Guan Qianxiu wondered if he could take this chance to kill Lu Li. "Qianxiu!" Right at that moment, a thunderous voice came from Guan Qianxiu's soul. "How can you be distracted when going through the tribulation of soul is so important? If you don't guard your mind, how can you survive the tribulation of soul? The tribulation pellet can protect you from death. But if you fail, how can you win the sex assessment? How can you go back if you cannot become an official disciple? Guard your mind, guard your mind, guard your mind." Guan Qianxiu's heart skipped a beat. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He almost jumped up in fright. He was not an idiot since he could reach this realm. He knew that he almost lost his mind just now. If he had been focused on killing Lu Li, he would not have survived the tribulation of soul. By then, everything would be over. Guan Qianxiu hurried to guard his mind and drive out all the distracting thoughts. He forgot everything and focused on the tribulation of soul. If he had any more distracting thoughts, then he would not be able to pass the tribulation. On the other hand, Lu Li had entered a dreamlike state. He had forgotten everything outside and was focused on the heavens tribulation. Thunderbolts kept falling down from the two platforms, reflecting each other's brilliance. It was quite a lively scene. The onlookers were having a feast for their eyes. They had seen people go through the tribulation and they themselves had gone through it many times. But this was the first time they had seen two people go through the tribulation at the same time. "Brother Lu, you must pass the tribulation successfully," Hu Shiming murmured to himself. He glanced at Guan Qianxiu and said with a grin, "You can suppress Guan Qianxiu when you are at the peak of the fourth tribulation. It will be easier for you to suppress him when you reach the fifth tribulation. If you can become a disciple in the sex assessment and eliminate Guan Qianxiu, I think the Guan family will vomit blood." Hu Shiming's voice was not loud, but the two patriarchs of the Guan family heard him. They blew their beards and glared at him. But since Guan Qianxiu was going through the tribulation, they could not do anything. They clenched their teeth and promised to teach Hu Shiming a lesson when they had the chance. "All right." Wang Ningxue shook her head with a smile and said, "Young Master Hu, don't make trouble. Let's wait for the result." Chapter 2700. The first round of thunderbolts did not inflict any harm on Lu Li, nor did the second round of fire. Lu Li's physical strength had improved greatly at the Yama mountain. Not even the first two heavens tribulations of the sixth heavens tribulations could harm him, let alone the fifth. Bolts of thunderbolts came down with fire. Lu Li was on fire. But the fire didn't even burn his skin. He was surrounded by the fire. Instead, he seemed to be enjoying himself. Those outside were speechless. On the other hand, Guan Qianxiu had passed the second tribulation and was on the third, the tribulation of chaos. He was calm and paid no more attention to what was going on outside. He even forgot that Luli was going through the tribulation next to him. When the last round of fire was over, Luli began the tribulation of chaos as well. This tribulation of chaos would be accompanied by the thunderbolts, and the air of chaos would harm a warrior's life force. This tribulation of chaos was similar to the thunderbolts at the Yama mountain, but not as strong. In less than an hour, both Guan Qianqiu and Luli had passed the tribulation of chaos. That being said, Guan Qianqiu was suffering. His breath of life was weakening. On the other hand, Luli seemed to be fine. Guan Qianqiu began to undergo his fourth heavenly tribulation. He wasn't undergoing the heart-soul tribulation, but the samsara tribulation. This was a tribulation unique to the sixth heavenly tribulation, and it was also the most terrifying tribulation of the sixth heavenly tribulation. It was even more terrifying than the heart-soul tribulation. Luli began the tribulation of soul. As soon as he passed the tribulation of chaos, he took the pellet given to him by Hu Shimeng. He entered a state of illusion, guarding his mind, driving away all distracting thoughts and waiting for the tribulation of soul. Was the tribulation of soul a bit slow? Luli had been waiting for half a day, but the tribulation of soul didn't come. He opened his eyes in a daze, only to see that Guan Qianqiu had passed the tribulation. People were congratulating him. Whoosh! Someone came from the distance and shouted from the distance. Emperor Heng said that as a registered disciple, Luli, you cannot take the tribulation on the platform. Stop it at once. What? Luli was shocked. He was in the middle of the tribulation of soul. How could he be stopped? Wasn't this going to cost him his life? He saw several warriors guarding the platform deactivate the glyphs at once. At the same time, one of them ran toward him, trying to take him out. Ah! Guan Qianqiu laughed out loud and shouted, Luli, if you stop halfway through the tribulation, you will never have a chance to go through it again. Ha ha ha. With that said, Guan Qianqiu sent a message to Luli. Luli, I asked someone to tell Emperor Heng. From now on, you are a useless man. You will have no chance to pass the internal assessment. Ha ha ha. Looking at Guan Qianqiu's disgusting face, Luli's blood rushed to his head. He was filled with killing intent. He was about to fly out and fight with Guan Qianqiu to kill him. Buzz, right at that moment, a drop of elixir spread out from Luli's soul. It chilled his soul. He shivered and everything in front of him disappeared. It was all an illusion just now. The heart-soul tribulation actually started without any warning. Cold sweat broke out on Luli's forehead. The fifth tribulation of mind and soul was so horrifying that it had begun without him knowing. He even thought it was real. Everything was so real. Even Guan Qianqiu, Wang Ningxue, Hu Shimeng, and the others' expressions were very real. Jiang Yi could not differentiate between illusion and reality. Phew phew. Luli exhaled. That drop of elixir must be Hu Shimeng's elixir. It was a top-level elixir for passing tribulations. It woke him up at the critical moment. Out of instinct, Luli used psychic power to check how many drops of elixir there were and how many times it could save him. He used his spiritual will to scan his soul and soon discovered the 3 drops of God liquid hidden within. The 3 drops of elixir were beautiful. They were crystal clear and hiding in his soul. They did not stay still. Instead, they were swimming around like fish. The 3 drops of elixir were chasing each other, surpassing each other, and the cycle was endless. Luli was stunned. He felt his mind was being controlled by the 3 drops of elixir. He felt his soul was imprisoned. He could only stare at the 3 drops of elixir. He could not use psychic power to check other places. He had no idea what was going on outside. It seemed he would have to stare at the 3 drops of elixir for the rest of his life. The heart-soul tribulation is freaky, Luli exclaimed. Even his own soul could be imprisoned. If he did not think of a way, he would really become a dead man staring at the 3 drops of elixir for the rest of his life. I have to retreat in order to advance. I have to enter a state of forgetfulness. Luli allowed himself to completely relax and let his mind go blank, completely forgetting about himself. He had forgotten everything. Naturally, the 3 drops of elixir would disappear. As long as they disappeared, he would be able to pass this tribulation. However, Luli had entered a state of forgetfulness. His mind was blank. However, there were still 3 drops of elixir swaying in his soul. The 3 drops of elixir seemed to have been engraved in his soul. He could not get rid of them no matter what. Time moved on. Luli did not know how long had passed. His soul still could not get rid of the 3 drops of elixir. He had tried many ways, but the images of the 3 drops of elixir kept appearing in his mind. The 3 drops of elixir were chasing each other, taking turns to lead the way. It was a cycle. It was easy to lose oneself in such images and also to lose one's mind. Luli was losing his mind. No matter what he did, his psychic power could not get rid of the 3 drops of elixir. He knew that this was the heart-soul tribulation. It was to make him stay in the elixir forever until he lost his mind and his soul collapsed. The Blood Evil King did not send any message, as if he did not know what was going on with Luli. Luli could not even send a message to the Blood Evil King. He could only force himself to calm down and tell himself not to be hasty. The more he told himself not to be hasty, the more anxious he would be. Anyone would lose his mind when he was staring at the 3 drops of elixir. Time moved on. Luli did not know how long had passed. Maybe 2 hours? Maybe 1 day? Or maybe 1 year? Luli's mind was in a mess, and his face showed signs of pain. As a matter of fact, Luli had only been in the heart-soul tribulation for the time for 1 incense stick to burn. He felt it had been a long time, but in reality it was just a short time. Wang Ningxue and Hu Shiming's hearts were weighed down by the pain and madness on Luli's face. The 2 patriarchs of the Guan family, on the other hand, put on a mocking smile. They had all gone through heavenly tribulations and had seen many people go through them. When one was in the heart-soul tribulation, it usually meant that something was wrong. It was a sign that one was about to fail. Chapter 2701. The 3 drops of divine water kept moving around, chasing each other, forming a cycle. It would be interesting to watch it when one had nothing to do. But if you kept thinking about it in your mind, you would feel sick, go crazy, and go crazy. It had been the time for 2 incense sticks to burn, but Luli felt it had been 2 years. He looked awful and ferocious. He was on the verge of a mental breakdown. He had been telling himself to forget everything, to forget about the 3 drops of divine water, and to blank out his soul. But he could not do it no matter what. Blood Evil King didn't send him any message or offer him any help. Maybe, as far as Blood Evil King was concerned, if Luli could not survive this tribulation of mind and soul, then there was nothing he could do. What to do? What to do? What to do? After the time for 1 incense stick to burn, Luli felt it had been another year. His mind was filled with the same 3 words, trying to figure out how to get out of this predicament. He had thought of many ways, everything he could think of, but he still could not get rid of the images of the 3 drops of divine water from his mind. He had given it up. He didn't think he could do it. His mind began to wander. He thought about his experience in the endless ruins, how Lu Ling and Luli were taken away, how he overcame all difficulties and failed on the verge of success at the recruitment ceremony. He thought about everything he went through in the Yama Mountain and how Emperor Wu's attitude toward him changed. Follow your heart and follow nature. All of a sudden, Luli remembered the words Emperor Wu gave him. His soul trembled. Emperor Wu told him on purpose for the sake of Luli's tribulation. Luli had forgotten about it. Only now did he remember. He repeated the words to himself several times, but he was confused. What did the words mean? Follow your heart? Follow nature? Was it telling him not to go against it by force and to follow his heart? The thing was, he had to forget about the 3 drops of divine water. He had to get rid of the images of the 3 drops of divine water from his mind. If he didn't, then the images of the 3 drops of divine water would stay in his soul. Sooner or later, he would lose his mind and his soul would collapse. What do they mean by follow your heart and follow nature? What is the profound meaning of these words? Luli murmured to himself for a while. His soul trembled again. At this moment, he seemed to understand. Why did he have to get rid of the images of the 3 drops of divine water from his mind? So what if these 3 drops of water made him think about it? Could these 3 drops of water devour his soul? If he was strong, then let him be strong. Wouldn't it be fine as long as he ignored him? Wasn't this the Tao of nature? The more he cared about it, the more important it would be, and the more likely it would be to have a demonic barrier. If he didn't care about it, then everything would just be a fleeting cloud. What did it have to do with him? At this moment, Luli was suddenly enlightened. His tense soul relaxed. Even though he was still thinking about the 3 drops of water, Luli didn't care anymore. Just like the omnipresent wind outside, it could blow however it liked. Just like the clouds in the sky, the clouds were natural and there was no need to pay too much attention to them. Gradually, Luli became more and more relaxed. He went from the state of forgetfulness to the state of enlightenment. Slowly, the 3 drops of water in his mind gradually disappeared, and finally, his mind became blank. Buzz! Right at that moment, Luli opened his eyes. He saw Wang Ningxue and Hu Shimeng who were worried, Guan Qianqiu who was still on the tribulation platform, and the onlookers. Luli put on a smile. He knew that he had passed the tribulation of mind and soul, the most difficult and horrifying heaven's tribulation. Good! Well done, Brother Lu. Luli has passed the tribulation of mind and soul. Wang Ningxue and Hu Shimeng smiled as well. There was still one more heaven's tribulation, but it shouldn't be a problem. The chances of Luli passing the tribulation were 70 to 80%. Congratulations, little Lu. Finally, the blood-evil emperor said, "Don't blame me for not helping you. You must face the 5th and 6th heaven's tribulation by yourself, or else you will never reach the emperor realm. You will be a piece of crap before you reach the emperor realm. How can you grow without experiencing some things?" Luli understood this. He didn't blame the blood-evil emperor. With a gentle smile, Luli replied, "Lord Evil Emperor, I understand. Thank you for your concern. Have a good rest. The last heaven's tribulation is coming." The blood-evil emperor said no more questions after that. Luli took 2 pellets and closed his eyes to rest. The clouds were gathering. The last God's tribulation was about to come. After the heaven's tribulation, Luli would be a warrior of the 5th tribulation. His abilities in all aspects would be enhanced. Boom, boom, boom. A bolt of 7-colored thunderbolt came down from the sky. This thunderbolt was the combination of the previous 3 heavens' tribulations. There were thunderbolts, flames, and air of primordial chaos. There was another kind of energy that could attack the soul, which was quite intimidating. Luli used the dragon wrestling skill and the heaven armor skill to resist. Surges of horrifying energy entered Luli's body, and some entered his soul. Luli used the soul-devouring skill of ferocious beasts to defend against the soul attack. At the same time, he used the trace of Great Tao to absorb the remaining energy. Not only did he have to defend against the energy, he had to find a way to absorb it. The heaven's tribulation was powerful. Luli's body was injured at once, but it couldn't kill him. His skin and muscles were charred, which was not a big deal for Luli. Luli also withstood the soul attack. The soul-devouring skill of ferocious beasts was powerful. All the soul attacks were devoured. After the devouring, the soul attacks could be transformed into soul energy to strengthen the soul. Boom, 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 boom. More and more thunderbolts came down. Lu Li's injuries were getting worse. But those outside could tell that Lu Li's injuries were not fatal. As long as he could survive the heaven's tribulation, nothing else mattered. When the 9th bolt of heaven's tribulation came down, Lu Li was charred. He was barely breathing, as if he could pass away at any time. But Wang Ningxue and Hu Shimeng were smiling. Lu Li had passed the heaven's tribulation successfully. He had become a warrior of the 5th tribulation. Swish, in the end, a bolt of purple thunderbolt came down. This time, it was not to attack Lu Li, but to enhance him. Lu Li's wounds were recovering quickly. Both his soul and body were transformed, and he was growing stronger. A moment later, the charred skin on Lu Li's skin peeled off, revealing his baby-like skin. Wang Ningxue turned around at once. Lu Li put on a robe with a big smile. He flew out from the platform and landed in front of Hu Shimeng and Wang Ningxue. "Congratulations, Brother Lu." Hu Shimeng patted Lu Li's shoulder and said, "You have passed the 5th tribulation. You can take the 6th one and you have a chance to take the 7th one. Given your abilities, I think you can defeat an average lord. Even if Guan Qianqiu has passed the 6th tribulation, he can do it as well." Ha ha ha. Lu Li smiled but said nothing. He turned to Guan Qianqiu and suddenly said, "Young Master Guan, I have passed the heaven's tribulation. Now it is up to you." Chapter 2702. Guan Qianqiu's mind was disturbed by Lu Li's success. So many people were watching. How could Lu Li succeed earlier than him? Even though Guan Qianqiu had to go through 2 more heaven's tribulations than Lu Li, he felt humiliated. Of course, Guan Qianqiu was not an idiot. He knew that Lu Li had sent him a message on purpose so that something would happen to him in the tribulation of soul. Soon, Guan Qianqiu forced himself to calm down. He closed his eyes and continued the tribulation of soul. He had the tribulation pellet which was designed to help him go through the tribulation of soul. If it weren't for the pellet, he would have been in serious trouble just now. At the moment, some energy was surging in from his soul to keep him conscious. After that, Lu Li paid no more attention to Guan Qianqiu. He sat on the ground with his legs crossed and began to stabilize his realm. This tribulation had improved his physical body. If he were to release dragon wrestling skill now, his physical body would be as strong as a warrior at the middle stage of the Lord Realm. Regular Lord Realm warriors might not be able to kill him without some powerful move. Lu Li's soul was improved as well and his pellet was transformed. That being said, Lu Li didn't have much divine energy left. Last time, his pellet was broken by Guan Qianqiu. It would take him a long time to recover his divine energy. Lu Li checked and was satisfied. This tribulation was different. It was like a metamorphosis. Lu Li had been enhanced in all aspects. He was on a different level. 5th tribulation, Lu Li exclaimed. When he was at the 2nd heaven, the 4th tribulation was already impressive. He didn't expect that one day, he would reach the 5th tribulation and be as strong as a Lord Realm warrior. If he were to go back to the 2nd heaven, he would be able to defeat the entire 2nd heaven. Not even the Demon King would be a match for him. Well, something is not right. Lu Li thought about the Demon King. He didn't have much contact with the Demon King, and he didn't see the Demon King attack with full force. That being said, he felt the Demon King was unpredictable. The more Lu Li thought about it, the more he felt something was not right. Even though he was a warrior at the 5th tribulation and could be as strong as a warrior at the 6th tribulation, he still felt he was no match for the Demon King. The Demon King was at least a Lord Realm warrior? Or even a great emperor? Phoenix Queen. He suddenly remembered that the great demon king had slapped the Phoenix Empress in the face, but the Phoenix Empress hadn't dared to come to the second heaven to cause trouble. From this point, could it be that the great demon king was also at the overlord level or even a very powerful one? The problem was that there were only so many third heavenly layer emperor ranked, and female emperor ranked were even fewer. If the great demon king was a powerful emperor ranked, he would have long been famous in the third heavenly layer, right? He couldn't figure it out. Luli shook his head and came back to his senses. He was afraid that only the second heaven would know about this. Now that he was still in the endless divine ruins, he did not even know if he could return to the third heaven. There was no point in thinking about these things. How do I go back? Luli was worried. This was a completely different world from the third heaven. Now that the world above the fourth heaven had collapsed, how could he go back to the third heaven from the endless ruins? On this thought, Luli became depressed. The joy of passing the fifth heavenly tribulation was gone. The demonic abyss was still invading the third heaven. Although they had blown up the altar, who knew if the demonic abyss could summon the Devil Lord? If the Devil Lord was summoned, could the Reincarnation Emperor and the others fight back? If the Reincarnation Emperor and the others could not, then the third heaven would be destroyed, and so would the second heaven. If by the time they went back, the third heaven would become a second demonic abyss, then what was the point of going back? It had been several years since he came to the endless abyss. He could not even find a way back. He didn't even know when he would lose his life. He didn't know how Lu Ling and Xiang Linglong were doing either. On this thought, Luli felt even more depressed. He was lost. He didn't know what to do. He had to take it one step at a time. Okay. Luli didn't know how long he had been in closed-door cultivation. A shout woke him up. Luli opened his eyes just in time to see Guan Qianxiu flying down from the tribulation platform in high spirit. Many people gathered around him, congratulating him. Guan Qianxiu was young. He was only about 100 years older than Luli, but he had already reached the Lord Realm. Whether it was the third heaven or the endless ruins, Guan Qianxiu was a top-notch talent. Guan Qianxiu exchanged greetings with the people over there. Then, he walked over to Luli. Wang Ningxue and Hu Shimeng looked at each other. They forced a smile and cupped their fists to congratulate Guan Qianxiu. They were all disciples of aristocratic families. Even if they wanted to cut each other into pieces behind their backs, they still had to put up a front. Ha ha ha, thank you, Lady Ningxue and Brother Hu. Guan Qianxiu returned the gesture with a smile. Then, he looked at Luli and said, Brother Lu, I have passed the sixth heaven's tribulation. Are you disappointed? Luli stood up, nodded honestly and said, Yes, I am disappointed. I hope you will be blasted into pieces by the heaven's tribulation. It is a pity that good people don't live long. Lu Li's unkind words froze the smile on Guan Qianxiu's face. He stopped pretending and stared at Lu Li fiercely. Lu Li, just you wait for the sect assessment. I will make sure you die. Even if you quit now, I will not let you walk out of the Heaven Emperor dynasty. Do you believe that the Guan family can do that? Of course I believe you. Luli was not afraid at all. The Guan family is a big family. You can send out more than a dozen quasi-emperors, right? But what is the point of relying on the seniors in your family? If you want to kill me, then do it yourself. I remember that fights to the death are allowed in the Heaven Emperor sect, right? How about we go to the Hall of Patriarchs and go to the arena and be responsible for our own lives? What? Lu Li's words caused a stir. The Heaven Emperor sect did have such a rule. If there were irreconcilable conflicts between disciples and the patriarchs could not suppress it, then the disciples would have to go to the arena and fight to the death. Of course, usually, when there were conflicts, the disciples would be suppressed by their respective masters. It had been many years since there were fights to the death at the Heaven Emperor sect. 2 registered disciples who had just passed the Heaven's tribulation were going to fight to the death? This was big news. Young Master Lu. Wang Ningxue looked at Lu Li with worry. Lu Li had just reached the fifth heaven's tribulation, and he was going to fight to the death. What if Guan Qianqiu killed him? Ha ha ha. Hu Shimeng laughed. Okay, Brother Lu, I am convinced by your strength. Brother Guan, what do you say? Guan Qianqiu's eyes were filled with killing intent and his face was filled with anger. He was about to accept the challenge when a patriarch next to him stopped him and said, Qianqiu, don't be silly. You have just passed the heavens tribulation. Stabilize your realm and improve your skills. You can kill him at the sex assessment. Do not fall into his trap now. It is not worth it to fight now. Qianqiu, calm down. The other patriarch said at once, as long as you pass the assessment and become a disciple of the Heaven Emperor sect, Lu Li will be eliminated. Once he is eliminated, he will be driven out. By then, you can decide how you want to kill him. Okay. Guan Qianqiu calmed down. He threw Lu Li a cold glance and said, Lu Li, you want to kill me? I will give you a chance. I will wait for you at the sex assessment. Let's see who kills who. Let's go. With that said, Guan Qianqiu flew away with the two patriarchs and vanished into the distance. Chapter 2703. Lu Li went back to the Yama Mountain. There was still more than a month to go before the sect assessment. He could use this time to stabilize his realm and improve his abilities. Lu Li went to see Emperor Wu as soon as he got back to the Yama Mountain to express his gratitude. If it were not for Emperor Wu's advice, Lu Li would have been in trouble. If he could not handle the soul tribulation, he would either become a living dead or be blasted to death on the spot. Emperor Wu didn't say anything. He just told Lu Li to cultivate and prepare for the sect assessment. He thought about it and said before Lu Li left, the sect assessment has always been strict. If you want to win, you must remember a few things. First, do not kill each other. The sect values this the most. At least, do not take the initiative. There will be powerful warriors monitoring the competition. No tricks can escape the eyes of the powerful warriors. Another thing is, do not admit defeat easily. No matter how hard it is, you must hold on. Do not admit defeat until the last moment. The final evaluation will be decided by the powerful warriors of the sect. There are 10 of them. If the number of votes is less than 5, then you can't pass the assessment. So, how to make the 5 judges approve of you is the key. Lu Li thanked Emperor Wu again, but he was a bit worried. He didn't know who the judges were and he didn't know the temperament of the 10 judges. On the other hand, the disciples of the big families knew all the information of the judges in advance. Lu Li had lost before the competition even started. Bidding farewell to Emperor Wu, Lu Li went back to his cabin and began closed-door cultivation. He didn't come out at all this time. He only left the cabin when the sect competition was about to begin. Lu Li left the Yama Mountain and teleported to the Hall of Patriarch. When he arrived at the gate, Lu Li found that there were many people here. Not only the registered disciples who were going to participate in the sect assessment, but many formal disciples were here as well. Lu Li glanced over and found that the least of the formal disciples were at the peak of the 5th tribulation. There were quite a number of powerful warriors of the Lord Realm. What was more, they were young. There were no lethargic old men. More than 100 disciples were here. Chu Yen, the one who had a conflict with Lu Li at the gate of the Hall of Patriarchs, was here. He was staring at Lu Li coldly. How come so many people are here? Lu Li was curious. He saw Wang Ningxue and the others were here. He quickly walked to her and asked, Lady Ningxue, I didn't expect so many people to come. PFFF, Wang Ningxue smiled sweetly and attracted the attention of many people nearby. Wang Ningxue smiled and transmitted her voice. This time, it is not only you who will be tested. The official disciples will also be tested. The official disciples in the sect are divided into different levels. Different ranks enjoy different treatment. Don't you see that our badges are slightly different? The color is different. Luli looked around. There seemed to be something different. Even though they were all hexagrams, some were white, some were yellow, and some were gold. Wang Ningxue explained, white, gold, black, these are the 4 ranks of disciples. White is the lowest rank, and the resources and treatment they receive are also the lowest. If you want better treatment and resources, you'll have to pass the sect's assessment time again and continue to advance. I got it. Lu Li's expression was even more gloomy. He asked, then are we going to be with them? Yes. Wang Ningxue nodded and said, I see that Chu Yan and you don't seem to be on good terms? You have to be careful. Lu Li wanted to be careful, but would Chu Yan and Guan Qianxiu let him go? Lu Li stood on the side, feeling upset. That being said, given that so many judges were here, Chu Yan and Guan Qianxiu wouldn't go too far. Wang Ningxue was a disciple of a big family. Lu Li asked, Ningxue, do you know who the judges are this time? What are their preferences? What are their personalities like? I don't know. Wang Ningxue shook her head and said, I only know that my master is one of the judges. Every time, the judges are of the Great Emperor Realm. There are dozens of Great Emperor Realm warriors in the Celestial Emperor sect. Nobody knows which 10 of them will be this time. Oh, I see. Lu Li was disappointed. Wang Ningxue thought about it and said, Lu Li, I remember an ancestor of my family once said that the Celestial Emperor sect values character. If a disciple has a bad character, he or she may be eliminated no matter how talented he or she is. Thank you, Lady Ningxue. Lu Li cupped his fists and left. As a matter of fact, this could be seen from the rules of the Celestial Emperor sect. The Celestial Emperor sect punished disciples with bad character, and those who used the sect's name to do evil. Also, Martial Emperor Wu had told Lu Li about this. Lu Li was a bit relieved. Seeing Lu Li coming over, Guan Qianxiu sneered but said nothing. He stood there in silence. Lu Li said nothing as well. He waited quietly with the registered disciples. More and more people came. An hour later, Patriarch Gu came out and began to call the names. Listening to the name list, Lu Li realized that there were 50 people participating in the assessment this time. There were 10 registered disciples and 40 official disciples. The 40 were the lowest level disciples with white badges. Wang Ningxue and the others were not among them. They had just become formal disciples and were not qualified yet. Sure enough, Chu Yan was in there. When his name was called, Chu Yan threw a look at Lu Li. The threat was clear. When everyone was called, Patriarch Gu said, the assessment is simple. You will have to clean up the beasts in the void. The time limit is 1 year. You can accumulate points by killing beasts. You must collect the heads or bodies of the beasts you kill. This is an important proof for the assessment. Also, Patriarch Gu became solemn. He shouted, many of you know the rules. But I have to say one more thing. It is forbidden to kill each other in the assessment. Especially, no one is allowed to kill. Once found out, you will be punished according to the rules of the sect. You will not be spared. This time, there will be no one to protect you. If you run into danger, you will have to deal with it yourself. Don't think that the sect will protect you secretly. You are responsible for your own life and death. We will give you a map of the beasts in the void. Do what you can. Yes, Patriarch Gu. Patriarch Gu, we understand. Patriarch Gu, don't worry. We will not kill each other. We will help each other. Yes. We are from the same sect. We should work together. People around him answered at once. Lu Li's mind was weighed down again. According to Patriarch Gu, there would be no one to protect them this time. Didn't that mean no one would monitor them? Patriarch Gu did say that it was forbidden to kill each other. But if they were killed in secret and the bodies were thrown into the beasts' mouths, who would know how they died? Luli didn't know about the situation in the void, but he could tell from the name that it was a big place. Even if there were some Emperor Realm warriors patrolling, they couldn't keep an eye on him all the time. Whatever. Chapter 2704. Luli wanted to wait and see which 10 Emperor-level warriors would be the judges. Unexpectedly, after Patriarch Gu announced the rules, he and several patriarchs took them away by teleportation formation. What was more, they left the Heaven Emperor universe and appeared in the Heaven Emperor city. Patriarch Gu did not linger. He led them into a castle and teleported again. This time, they appeared in a red void. They were on a boulder floating in the air. It was eerily quiet and the light was dim, which made people nervous. Many of the 40 official disciples must have been here before, so they did not mind. The others, on the other hand, felt uneasy to some extent. Luli stood on the side quietly, observing the situation. What kind of place was the misty void? What kind of beasts were there? Patriarch Gu gave Luli the answer. He took out a scroll and gave it to the disciples. This is what we found half a month ago. Of course, we don't know if the beasts will leave now. It is written clearly. Do what you can and don't throw your lives away for the sake of the test. Luli took over the scroll and opened it. It was a map with many red dots. The red dots were boulders, mountains, and even the Milky Way floating in the air. The terrain of the misty void was complicated, Luli understood after a few glances. There were 3 kinds of beasts in the void. One of them was the daughter that he could not provoke. It was stated that those below the later stage of the 6th tribulation would die for sure. That being said, the number of these beasts was small and they mainly lived in one area. Luli would be fine as long as he stayed away from that area. The daughter was the target of the several most powerful official disciples. If they wanted to advance, killing dozens of daughter was the fastest way. Each beast of the void was worth 10,000 points. The other 2 types of beasts were worth 1 point and 100 points respectively. The points were secondary. To be able to kill the beast of the void was proof of their abilities. Only those with powerful abilities could advance. Otherwise, even if they could advance, the other disciples would not be convinced. One of the other 2 types was the flying locust beast, which was the most numerous. They could be seen everywhere in the misty void, but they were not powerful. An ordinary flying locust beast's battle prowess was comparable to a 5th tribulation middle or late stage 5 tribulation. The flying locust king was slightly stronger, barely comparable to a feudal lord. The other type of exotic beast was called the flying soul beast. This kind of exotic beast was like a ghost, coming and going without a trace. It also knew soul attacks, and its power attacks were not weak. There were 5 main areas of activity for these exotic beasts, and they were all marked out clearly. Do you understand? After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Elder Gu said, "Everyone, look carefully at these green spots. These spots are protected by divine runes. When you encounter danger, you can think of a way to get to these spots. Humans can easily enter these places, but exotic beasts can't. I can guarantee your safety." Luli immediately looked at those spots and memorized them. They were places that could save his life. Elder Gu waited for everyone to watch for a while before he waved his hand and said, "All right, all of you can go. Come back here in a year and teleport back together. Go." The disciples had been waiting impatiently for a long time. They immediately flew towards the north, where the daughter was located. They were confident that they were powerful and wanted to hunt down the dozens of daughter. The rest of the people also left one after another. A few of them walked together. They should have already discussed this beforehand to move together. In this way, their safety would be guaranteed and they wouldn't have to worry about being trapped and killed. Luli didn't have a partner. Even though he knew some of the registered disciples, who dared to go with him. Guan Xianxiu had said that he would kill Luli. Therefore, even if there were people that liked Luli, they wouldn't go with him. Guan Qianxue left without looking at Luli. He didn't go with the registered disciples either, but with 3 formal disciples. The 3 of them might be disciples of the Guan family, or they might be related to the Guan family. It didn't even matter if they could pass this test or not. The most important thing was to make sure that Guan Qianxue could pass. If they couldn't pass, they just couldn't make it to the next round. If Guan Qianxue couldn't pass, then he would be eliminated. Of course, it could also be that Guan Qianxue was powerful, and the 3 wanted to team up with him. More and more people were leaving, but Luli didn't move. When everyone was gone, Luli flew to the west. Chu Yan went to the north and Guan Qianxue went to the east. Luli had to go to the west and the south. The people in front of him had flown away. Luli flew in the endless void by himself. He seemed small and lonely. Soon, he disappeared into the distance as well. Only Patriarch Gu and the others were left. You stay here and take command, Patriarch Gu said and left in the teleportation formation. He went back to the castle in the Celestial Emperor City. Instead of going back to the Celestial Emperor realm, he went to another castle. This castle was large with 10 powerful warriors sitting with their legs crossed. Emperor Rui was one of them. In the middle of them was a huge crystal ball. If Luli and the others could see the crystal ball, they would be stunned. This was because everything that was happening in the disorienting void could be displayed in the crystal ball. It was as if the disorienting void was inside the crystal ball. The 50 warriors had spread out. Some were fighting against the beasts in the void. Everyone could see it. As a matter of fact, the outside did not know that this was how many tests were conducted in the Celestial Emperor sect. The 10 judges could monitor every move of the disciples, including the tricks that the disciples used in secret. The test was mainly divided into 2 parts. One was combat strength, and the other was character. It was not to say that everyone in the Celestial Emperor sect was a good person. If they were, the Celestial Emperor sect would have been destroyed a long time ago. There was an unwritten rule in the Celestial Emperor sect. People could be bad, bloodthirsty, and belligerent. They could even have many flaws. But they could not lose their humanity. This was what all the past masters of the Celestial Emperor sect valued. Without humanity, what was the use of being powerful? It would only bring endless troubles and crises to the sect. What was the most important thing for a sect? Reputation. That was what the Celestial Emperor sect valued the most. Without reputation, there would be no constant flow of warriors seeking refuge. Without warriors seeking refuge, there would be no reserve force. In that case, there would not be a constant stream of powerful warriors. It was hard to build a good reputation. Generations of powerful warriors would have to work hard. However, it was easy to ruin the reputation. Any powerful warrior in the sect could go out and start a killing spree. Then, the sect would stink. By then, everyone would want to beat them up. Therefore, when the Celestial Emperor sect trained their disciples, they would first look at their character. At the very least, they must have the most basic humanity. After the character was fine, it would be up to talent. Without talent, what was the point of training them? Chapter 2705. Luli ran into the flying locust beasts after only a few thousand miles. These beasts looked like a combination of locusts and praying mantises. They were not large in size, only half the size of a human. However, their scythe-like arms were more than 10 feet long. They mainly relied on their scythe-like arms to attack. Swish, 4 flying locust beasts flew over. The 2 huge scythe-like arms cut through the air like 2 huge sabers. The edge of the scythe-like arms was solemn. Before the scythe-like arms reached Luli, the cold air had already swept over him. Luli felt he was frozen. They really are beasts. Mutated beasts? Luli smiled. He released the dragon wrestling skill and the heaven armor skill. Then, he dashed forward fearlessly. He took 2 hits from the scythe-like arms and reached out his hands. He grabbed the scythe-like arms of the flying locust beasts and pulled. Bang! Cyan blood spilled everywhere. One of the flying locust beast's arms was torn off by Luli. On the other hand, the 2 scythe-like arms didn't inflict any harm on Luli. Boom! Luli swung his arm and punched at the flying locust beast. Luli punched a hole in its head. Luli nodded. Without further ado, he released several honesty talismans and killed the other 3 flying locust beasts. Luli took out some clean water to wash off the blood and put away the 4 bodies of the flying locust beasts that were floating in midair. He used his body to take the brunt of the flying locust beasts just now because he wanted to test the offensive power of the flying locust beasts and his current defensive abilities. Now that the test was over, the flying locust beasts were nothing to be afraid of. He could kill them no matter how many came. Luli put on some clean clothes and flew on to the west. Along the way, he kept thinking about how he could advance to the next rank and become an official disciple. Kill a large number of flying locust beasts? Gain a large number of points? That didn't seem to be meaningful. There were so many people here, and almost all of them could kill flying locust beasts easily. Even if he could kill tens of thousands of flying locust beasts, he wouldn't stand out in the eyes of the powerful warriors of the Heaven Emperor sect. Of the 10 judges, 5 votes had to be cast. If none of the 10 registered disciples could get 5 votes, then they would all be disqualified and none could become an official disciple. Therefore, the key was not how many flying locust beasts he could kill, but how he could gain the approval of the 5 judges. The question was, what could he do here? Apart from killing the 3 types of void beasts, there was nothing else he could do. What was more, Luli could not kill the daughter, so he had to kill the flying locust beasts and the flying soul beasts. Are there any emperor-ranked monsters hiding nearby? Luli could not figure it out. He looked around and even used trace of Tao, but he found nothing. Luli could not figure it. Of them. Of locust Luli of flying. Locust beasts li into flying locust beasts. Luli could not figure it out. After some thoughts, he decided that no matter what, he would try to find more flying locust beasts and flying soul beasts to kill. Lu of spirit into, which li could, flying of, and at could. Having made up his mind, Luli didn't think too much about it. He flew straight towards the west. Patrioff of. Therefore, once he encountered the 2 of them, it would definitely not be a good thing. Even if he could suppress the 2 of them, when the time came, the 2 of them would complain first, and he would not be able to bear the consequences. At the very least, the crime of infighting would be unavoidable. He flew for 6 hours before he stopped. It was not because of powerful beasts, but because the void around him had changed. He flew to the west as fast as he could. There were many flying of locust beasts along the way. He killed them all with the honesty talisman. The void did not change, but Luli felt something was wrong. It was as if the void had become an illusion. Everything around him became an illusion. Luli even felt he was not real. Formation of heaven and earth? Luli squinted. There might be a super-powerful formation of heaven and earth here that could affect people's souls directly. Otherwise, he wouldn't have lost his sense of reality and illusion. Woo woo, from the distance, swarms of flying of locust beasts came, covering the sky and covering the earth. Luli released the honesty talisman at once. At the same time, he took out his weapon and released rays of sword light to attack the flying of locust beasts. Boom, 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 one after another, the flying of locust beasts were smashed. Luli's world had turned into a sea of cyan blood. He was fast. Though there were many flying of locust beasts coming from all sides, none could get close to him. Roar, roar, from the north came some roars. 3 beasts with a height of more than 1,000 feet dashed over with demonic flames around them. Before they could get close to Lu Li, he could feel their horrifying energy. At that moment, Lu Li stopped his attacks. He waited for the three beasts calmly. The three beasts were too powerful. Each one of them was as powerful as a quasi-emperor. If they were real, then he wouldn't have to fight back anymore. He could just wait for his death. He had had his doubts. Now, he was 100% sure that this was an illusion. Confusing the void. Lu Li suddenly understood the meaning of these words. There would probably be some confusion in this place. There would be a natural formation of heaven and earth that could confuse, frighten, and drive people crazy. It could even frighten people to death. Roar, roar. The three beasts roared and slapped at Lu Li. Apart from the horrifying qi and energy that made Lu Li's blood tumble, he was not harmed at all. The three huge hands went through Lu Li's body. Lu Li didn't show any fear. Instead, he laughed. Ha 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 ha, you want to confuse me? Unfortunately, my mind is as hard as a rock. Go, go! Lu Li shouted. All the flying of locust beasts around him disappeared. It was quiet again. Lu Li didn't seem to care. He didn't stop and kept flying into the distance. From the castle at the Celestial City came a voice of surprise. An emperor saw what happened to Lu Li. The emperor asked in surprise, "Is he a registered disciple this time? He has just passed the fifth tribulation. How can he be so calm? He can see through illusions easily." Patriarch Gu answered at once, "Emperor Qi, his name is Lu Li. He was at the peak of the fourth tribulation when he came to the recruitment ceremony. He has been going through the heavenly tribulation for a month. He almost made it to the top 10 but was knocked out by Guan Qianqiu. But he did injure Guan Qianqiu." Patriarch Gu's words caught many emperors' attention. Apart from Emperor Rui, no one else attended the recruitment ceremony. Therefore, they didn't know what happened. But Guan Qianqiu knew something. He was a disciple of the Guan family. There was a deceased emperor from the Celestial Emperor sect who used to be a member of the Guan family. Initial stage of the fifth tribulation? An old man with a long beard and a Taoist robe suddenly said, "It is boring to watch. How about I test him and see if he can see through illusions and if his mind is really as hard as a rock?" Ha ha ha. Chapter 2706. Patriarch Lu's full name was Lu Senator. He was indeed one of the top 10 powerful soul warriors in the endless ruins of gods. He had a good character and was a nice person. In recent years, he had become a naughty old man who loved to tease and train the younger generation. The sect assessment was never a fun thing to begin with. Everyone found it boring to be here for a year. Now that Patriarch Lu was going to make a move, everyone found it interesting and looked over. Patriarch Lu smiled. His white beard that was about to touch the ground danced up. He walked to the crystal ball and lit up a ray of white light in his hand. He closed his eyes and slowly covered the crystal ball with his hand. After the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, he withdrew his hand and said with a smile on his face, "Okay, everyone, get ready to watch the show. Don't be scared to death." Rui Emperor suddenly smiled and shook his head. "Patriarch Lu, I am going to disappoint you. I am willing to bet 10 bottles of myriad flower wine that this kid can solve it easily. He will not be scared." Lu Sen's white eyebrows twitched as if he was angry. He stared at Rui Emperor and said, "Little Rui, you are looking down on me. Let's bet. Everyone can be witnesses." "Okay, we will be witnesses. Rui Emperor, don't regret your loss. Rui Emperor, it's fine that you look down on us. How dare you look down on Patriarch Lu? I think you are going to lose the 10 bottles of myriad flower wine." Two emperors said at once. Rui Emperor was not popular in Heaven Emperor sect, but Patriarch Lu was a person of virtue and prestige. Naturally, these people worked together to put pressure on Rui Emperor. Rui Emperor smiled but said nothing. He just stared at the crystal ball. Everyone was staring at the crystal ball and locked onto Patriarch Lu. Nobody was watching the others, and after Patriarch Lu finished setting up, Luli suddenly felt something was wrong. He didn't stop. While flying forward, he closed his eyes and secretly used the trace of Great Tao to sense the surroundings. Nothing was happening. It was very quiet. There was no change in the energy in heaven and earth. Even the flow of the wind was the same. However, Luli just felt something was not right. It was as if there were more pairs of invisible eyes in the void. It was as if someone was lurking around and watching him. This feeling was very strange. If it wasn't for the fact that he possessed the Great Tao scar and his senses were dozens of times sharper, he would definitely not have been able to sense it. Of course, it was also related to the beast-like perception that he had developed after years of walking the line between life and death. Could there really be an emperor-ranked hiding nearby? It's just that the concealment method is too strong, so I can't sense it at all? An idea came to Luli's mind. He frowned and continued to sense the surroundings alertly. A moment later, he suddenly opened his eyes and looked to the left. The space in front of them on the left stirred slightly, and then a completely transparent strange beast flew out. The strange beast looked like a large bird with a sharp beak. Its beak was thin and long like a sharp sword. The strange beast was not big, only the size of a human. It had a pair of wings on its back, and its eyes were like two sapphires, shining with a dim light. Could this be a flying soul beast? Luli's heart skipped a beat. Without any hesitation, he generated 11 abominable talismans and smashed at the strange beast. The strange beast opened its mouth and let out a hair-raising cry. Then, it did something that stunned Luli. The beast's eyeballs flew out and dashed toward Luli in a blur. The eyeballs went into Luli's body and then dashed toward his soul at a horrifying speed. It really is a flying soul beast. This is soul attack. Luli calmed himself down. The flying soul beast only had strange attacks, but its abilities shouldn't be that horrifying. Luli released the soul-devouring skill, trying to devour the invading soul energy. No! At that moment Luli was shocked. The two eyeballs that went into his mind glowed as if they were going to explode in his mind. No matter how powerful the soul energy of the two beads were, if they were to explode in his soul would be hurt. He reacted quickly. Surges of soul energy whooshed out from his soul and turned into thousands of beasts that attacked the two beads. He had to take the initiative and devour the invading soul attack in case they exploded in his soul. Chirp, chirp, right at that moment there came some strange cries around Luli. Luli used psychic power to check and his soul was shocked. At least thousands of flying soul beasts came out from all directions. They were dashing toward him in a frenzy. More than 1,000 eyeballs of the flying soul beasts had come out. Luli's expressions changed. But after the time for one breath, he calmed down. Instead, he opened his eyes. He didn't do anything. He looked at the eyeballs coming at him from all directions. The eyeballs were real, and so were the flying soul beasts. The cries, the fluctuations in space, and the horrifying might of the strange beasts were all real. If it were anyone else, they would have been scared out of their wits. They would try their best to dodge, let alone attack. However, Luli didn't move at all, allowing the beasts to attack him. Whoosh, 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 the sky was filled with flying soul beasts' attacks. More than 2,000 eyeballs shot into Luli's body and into his soul spirit. They exploded inside Luli's soul spirit. The more than 2,000 eyeballs exploded, but Luli's soul was not harmed at all. It was obvious that these flying soul beasts were illusions. They didn't really exist. The flying soul beasts disappeared after a round of attacks. Luli put on a gentle smile and continued to fly forward. This is strange. This punk is not scared at all. How strong is his soul? How can he see through the illusion so easily? No way. He is just a warrior that has just passed the fifth heaven tribulation. How strong can his soul be? This punk is really strange. He can see through Patriarch Lu's plan so easily. Ha ha ha, Patriarch Lu, you have lost 10 bottles of flower wine. After the flying soul beasts disappeared, the castle became lively again. Several people exclaimed. Patriarch Lu put on a bitter face. The ring on his hand glowed and 10 bottles flew toward Emperor Rui. He murmured, "It doesn't make sense. How can this punk see through it so easily?" Ha ha ha. Emperor Rui put away the 10 bottles of flower wine without hesitation. He grinned and said, Patriarch Lu, you have lost. This punk can see through the golden beads that Emperor Huang made at the recruitment ceremony. He must have a special ability that makes his senses dozens or even hundreds of times sharper than average people. No wonder. The immortal emperors in the surroundings were all enlightened. They understood Emperor Heng's attainments in the field of divine inscriptions. Since he could even see through the golden beads Emperor Heng forged, it was very easy to understand why he could see through the illusionary realm old Lu set up. Chapter 2707. Luli could tell that it was an illusion not only because of the mark of Tao, but also because of his instinct. The flying soul beasts were realistic in every way, including their power and ferocious chi and energy. Luli even sensed a fatal danger in his soul, but he didn't think it was real. Maybe it was because Luli was good at sacred glyphs and he often set up illusions. He had a natural sense for things that were virtual. What was more, it didn't make sense. He had seen the map and there weren't many flying soul beasts here. Thousands of flying soul beasts suddenly made him suspicious. He had already sensed something was wrong, as if many eyes were peeping at him. His instinct told him that something was not right when this happened. After weighing all the factors, he was 100% sure that this was an illusion. What was more, if this was real, he couldn't survive on his own. His soul would be crushed. If so, why should he hide? What was there to be afraid of? Luli flew on. He ran into some flying locust beasts along the way, which were real. Luli killed many flying locust beasts and collected their bodies. All the way to the west. Luli didn't change his direction. He flew to the west as fast as he could. His target was a Milky Way in the west. There were many flying soul beasts over there. Luli planned to kill some of them so that he could earn more points. He was fast and didn't run into any trouble. Along the way, he had killed more than 5,000 flying locust beasts and gained more than 3,000 points. These points were not enough. There were so many flying locust beasts in the chaotic void. Anyone could kill thousands easily. After flying for more than 20 days, Luli finally arrived at the Milky Way in the west. This Milky Way was a gathering place for flying soul beasts. Luli didn't go over. He circled around the Milky Way in the distance to check it out. Someone is here. Soon, he noticed some black dot. There were 4 warriors and they were all formal disciples. Clearly, they were here to kill flying soul beasts for points. Luli was troubled. Among the 4 formal disciples, 2 were lords and 2 were at the peak of the 5th tribulation. Even though he was not afraid of them, they were formal disciples and he was just a registered disciple. These people had occupied this piece of land first, so if he went over, he would be fighting with them for territory. If a conflict were to break out, he would be in the wrong. The martial emperor had instructed him not to easily get into a conflict with the disciples of the sect, and not to fight with his fellow disciples. What should he do then? Retreat and find another place? After some thoughts, Luli flew toward the Milky Way. Before he got close, he sensed 4 streaks of psychic power. Realizing it was Luli, a young warrior in white shouted, "Buddy, go away. It is dangerous here. This is not a place for you." Luli wouldn't go looking for trouble since they were being polite. He cupped his fists and said, Brothers, I want to watch and learn from the side. I will not disturb you. Scram! Another somewhat gloomy black-robed youth coldly shouted. This is not a place for you to stay, Scram. Luli frowned but didn't lose his temper. He said, Brothers, this Milky Way is so big and there are so many flying soul beasts. You cannot kill them all. I will just kill some on the side. It won't disturb you. Luli didn't leave. He was still babbling, which enraged the gloomy young man. He glared at Luli and said, Are you going or not? I will slap you if you don't. I don't believe you. Luli cupped his fists and said, Brother, Patriarch Gu said that we cannot fight with our fellow disciples. I don't believe that you will do this to your fellow disciple. You are not a fellow disciple. The gloomy young man sneered. You are a registered disciple, and at the initial stage of the fifth tribulation. After this assessment, you will be expelled from the Heaven Emperor sect. What makes you think you can be our fellow disciple? Luli didn't want to waste time. He thought about it and said, How about this? Brother, I will take one attack from you. If you can hurt me, then I will leave. If not, then don't interfere. How about that? Ha 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 ha. The gloomy young man laughed, and so did the other three. Was this warrior at the initial stage of the fifth tribulation out of his mind? The gloomy young man was at the sixth tribulation. Even though he was only at the initial stage of the sixth tribulation, he was a real one. Okay, I will grant you your wish. The young man dashed over like a hawk. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of Luli. He raised one hand, which was glowing in 7 colors, and slapped at Luli's chest. Bang! Luli had secretly released the dragon skill and the heaven armor skill. He took the hit with his own strength. He felt as if a mountain had landed on his chest, and he was smashed backward. The young man's attack was powerful. Layers of strength passed through, which made Luli's blood tumble. His internal organs were shaken. He tasted sweetness in his throat and almost spat out blood. But he swallowed it down. He came back as soon as he stepped down. Cupping his fists, Luli said with a smile, Brother, thank you for showing mercy. The gloomy young man's expressions became unnatural. The other three were surprised as well. They knew very well how powerful the gloomy young man was. Even though he didn't use his strongest move, it was impossible that he couldn't hurt a warrior at the initial stage of the fifth tribulation. The white-robed young man who spoke first waved his hand and said, Vulture, come back. Brother, go and clean up the flying soul beast. But the flying soul beasts are strong. Be careful. If you can't handle it, come back to us at once. We will keep you safe. Thank you, brother. Luli cupped his fists and flew away along the Milky Way. Vulture came back with a gloomy face. He touched his nose and said, Where did this freak come from? How can he have such strong defense? All right, Vulture. The white-robed young man waved his hand and said, This place is so big. There is no end to the flying soul beast. Just let him do it. The ruins of gods are full of miracles. Those that can join our Heaven Emperor sect are the best of the best. It is not surprising that his defense is strong. Otherwise, how could he become a registered disciple? Ding Anji is a good one. What happened to Luli and the others was witnessed by the 10 emperors in the castle. A brown-skinned great emperor who looked like a black bear said, Emperor June, this disciple of yours is taught well. A scholarly emperor in a Taoist robe stroked his beard and said with a smile, Anji's temperament is good. It's just that his comprehension is not so good. He has been in the sect for over 500 years and he has only just reached the sixth tribulation. If he can't make it this time, I will put him in confinement for 1,000 years. Even though Emperor June seemed to be criticizing Ding Anji, those with discerning eyes could tell that he was proud of himself. Ding Anji's aptitude to reach the sixth tribulation in 500 years was not bad. More importantly, he had a good character. In the future, he would be worthy of the sect's nurturing. All right, Enough about your precious disciple. The white-bearded and short Emperor Lucian walked over. He glanced at the group of emperors and said, "How dare this kid come here?" That is, he refused to take the path to heaven and insisted on breaking through the gates of hell. Who wants to bet with me this time? I still have thousands of bottles of myriad flower wine. You can all bet. I don't believe that I can't kill him. At the very least, I will make him wet his pants. Chapter 2708. The brew of flowers was a kind of wine, a famous one, the most famous and precious in the endless ruins of divinity. Only one person could make this wine, a famous lady in the endless ruins of divinity. She was a warrior of the great Emperor realm. It was not hard to imagine the value of a wine made by a warrior of the great Emperor realm. The wine had a price but no supply. To get the wine, one had to be on good terms with the Empress or trade with a top-level relic. Fortunately, the Empress was the Emperor of the Heaven Emperor sect. That was why everyone could have some. It would be difficult for warriors of the great Emperor realm to get their hands on the wine. On the black market, one bottle could be sold for hundreds of millions of divine stones. Emperor Rue offered 50 bottles of brew of flowers at once, which piqued everyone's interest. 2 of them joined in the bet. It was boring to sit here and they might as well make some small bets. 2 of them took out 10 bottles of brew of flowers, betting that Lu Sun could not scare Lu Li away from the Milky Way. The other 2 bet with Emperor Rue that Lu Sun could. Ha ha! Lu Sun was delighted. He had turned into a naughty old man recently. The stakes were so high that he was delighted. Making sure that nobody was betting, he made a deal with Emperor Rue and walked to the crystal ball to set up. Inside the crystal ball, Lu Li had been flying for dozens of miles along the Milky Way. He stopped at this moment. He had been using the trace of Great Path to sense what was going on inside. The space in the Milky Way was trembling. Buzzing, a shadow emerged from the light in front of him. The shadow was translucent and had a long, pointy mouth. It also had sharp claws, and its 2 glowing blue eyes were even more terrifying. Whoosh whoosh! Lu Li could not afford to be careless. He used 10 abominable talismans at once, leaving only one to protect himself. The 10 abominable talismans fanned out toward the soul beast. Whoosh! The flying soul beast's eyeballs flew out, then its body turned into nothingness and burrowed into the void. While Lu Li was paying attention to the 2 eyeballs, the flying soul beast flew out from the space behind Lu Li. The flying soul beast stabbed at Lu Li with its sharp beak. A pincer attack. Lu Li used the trace of Great Path. His senses were sharp and he reacted at once. He released the 10,000 demon soul devouring technique to devour the soul attack. Then, he turned around abruptly and stretched out his hand at lightning speed, grabbing at the sharp mouth. He was so fast that he grabbed the beak of the flying soul beast easily. However, the beak glowed in blue and an electric arc came out from it. Lu Li's hand trembled and the beak pierced into Lu Li's chest at once. Lu Li felt a pain in his chest. A faint blue glow came out from the tip of the beak, which burned his skin. The beak easily penetrated into his body. If it were not for the fact that it pierced into his bones, his chest would have been pierced through. Over the years, Lu Li had never given up on bone refinement. His bones had turned black and were very strong. The beak could not pierce through them yet. If it had been someone with a weak physical body, they would have been pierced through and their internal organs would have been shattered. Buzz, at the same time, the 2 eyeballs in Lu Li's head were about to drill into his soul. Lu Li poured out soul energy and formed thousands of beasts that were trying to devour the 2 eyeballs. The 2 eyeballs were like 2 living creatures. They were hard to devour. They were moving around and giving out rays of blue light, trying to hurt Lu Li's soul. Lu Li's dragon soul glowed as he began to protect his soul. Lu Li didn't care about his soul anymore. He grabbed the beak of the flying soul beast with one hand and took out his weapon with the other. He kept hacking at the flying soul beast. The flying soul beast's defense was strong as well. Luli had hacked at it for more than a dozen times, but the flying soul beast was only injured, not killed. Luli's eyes glowed in a dark golden color. He released the Wind Soul skill to attack the flying soul beast's soul. This time it was effective. The flying soul beast's soul seemed to be weakened because it had released the two eyeballs. Luli's attack hurt its soul. Boom! Luli continued to hack at the flying soul beast. After hundreds of attacks, he finally cracked open the flying soul beast's head and smashed it to death. Hundreds of kilometers away, Ding Anji and Vulture looked at each other, and their expressions changed slightly. They had thought that Luli was just an average warrior at the initial stage of the fifth tribulation, and it would be hard for him to deal with the flying soul beast. They didn't expect that Luli could be killed so easily. What was more important was that Luli's body was strong. If they were the ones being stabbed by the flying soul beast, they would have been pierced through. However, the flying soul beast's mouth could only go 2 inches into Luli's body before it couldn't go any further. Also, Luli dared to grab the flying soul beast's mouth with one hand? Ding Anji and Vulture admired Luli's bravery. It was not that they couldn't kill the flying soul beast. In fact, they could do it more easily than Luli. However, Luli was at the initial stage of the fifth tribulation, and it was clearly his first time encountering a flying soul beast. Yet, he could kill one so easily. Ding Anji and Vulture had a whole new level of respect for Luli. Luli killed a flying soul beast and took pellets to heal his wound. Another flying soul beast could come out at any time. He must heal his wounds right away or something could go wrong. Luli didn't suffer serious injuries. He took some healing pellets and stood up after sitting in midair for a while. He continued to wander around. Ding Anji and Vulture also wandered around, looking for flying soul beasts. Whoosh! 2 flying soul beasts came out from Ding Anji and Vulture's side. Luli didn't go over to take them. He just watched from a distance. The 2 were strong. Vulture defended the flying soul beasts while Ding Anji attacked. The other 2 cooperated and killed the 2 flying soul beasts easily. None of the 4 was injured. The Milky Way was tens of thousands of miles long and more than 300 miles wide. Luli was only wandering around in a small part of it. He didn't dare to go too fast. He kept luring the flying soul beasts out, which made it easier for him to attack. No more flying soul beasts were injured. The flying soul beasts released soul attack. When the 2 eyeballs flew out, their souls would be weakened, which gave Luli a chance. When he released Skill of Wind, the flying soul beasts would be slowed down. It would be easier for Luli to kill the flying soul beasts. In 8 hours, Luli had killed 13 flying soul beasts and gained more than 1,000 points, which was much faster than killing flying locust beasts. Also, the number of flying soul beasts seemed to be endless. As long as Luli wandered around in the Milky Way, more flying soul beasts would come out. Not bad. In 3 or 4 months, I think I can kill 1 or 2,000 flying soul beasts. Luli thought to himself. It was a pity that there were 4 official disciples here. Without them, he could kill more flying soul beasts. He went to a corner of the Milky Way by himself. He didn't dare to go to the other side in case he got into conflict with Ding Anji and Vulture. Even though he was not afraid of the 4 of them, he would leave a bad impression if he got into conflict with them. Another 6 hours passed. Suddenly, there came 4 noises from the south. Luli checked with psychic power at once, only to see a horrifying scene. Ding Anji and the other 3 were running towards him in panic. There were 400 or 500 flying soul beasts chasing after them, but that was not the point. The point was, among the flying soul beasts there was a huge one. Its glowing eyeballs were as big as a human head. King of flying soul beasts. Luli heard from the people who came in this time that there was a king of flying soul beasts among the flying soul beasts. The king of flying soul beasts was even more powerful than the daughter beast. Average people would die if they encountered it. Ding Anji shouted at once, "Buddy, run. Get out of here." Luli didn't hesitate. This scene was not an illusion. Ding Anji and the others were not made up. He turned around and ran to the distance. Given his speed, he could get out of the Milky Way soon. Ha ha ha! Chapter 2709. This time, Lu Sen's plan was ingenious. He didn't create illusions to scare Luli, but to scare Ding Anji, Vulture and the other three. When the four of them were killing the flying soul beasts, hundreds of flying soul beasts suddenly appeared, and there was a legendary king of flying soul beasts. How could the four be suspicious? They ran at once. Lu Sen had set up locust beasts in 3 directions except for Luli. Out of instinct, the four of them ran toward Luli and told him to run when they saw him. Some of the flying soul beasts were real and most were fake. If the flying soul beasts were right next to Luli, he might have sensed something was wrong. But he was far away and Ding Anji, Vulture and the other 3 were scared out of their wits. Luli sped up and soon arrived at the edge of the Milky Way. As long as he could get out of the Milky Way, Emperor Rue and the other 3 would lose. Emperor Rue and the other 2 were speechless looking at the images in the crystal ball. Lu Sen was too cunning, and anyone else would be frightened by it. After all, Luli was not a match for the king of flying soul beasts. Emperor Rue and the other 2 looked at each other and sighed. They had suffered a great loss. Lu Sen had won dozens of bottles of blossom wine for nothing. Right at the edge of the Milky Way, Luli suddenly stopped. He turned around and looked back. At the same time, he used the trace of Tao to sense. He was surprised. Just now, he ran out of instinct. Now that he had come to his senses, he felt something was not right. Through Ding Anji and the other 3, he saw the king of flying soul beasts coming from behind. His eyes glowed and he suddenly laughed. Ding Anji and the other 3 saw this, and they felt they were looking at a fool. Behind them was an army of flying soul beasts and a king of flying soul beasts. Luli stopped after a while and smiled. What was he if not a fool? Run. What are you standing there for? Ding Anji flew over and scolded. This registered disciple was not smart enough. Was this the time to be in a daze? They wished they could run faster or they would become food for the flying soul beasts. Don't run. Luli pointed to the huge king of flying soul beasts and said, "This is fake, an illusion. There are 4 real soul beasts." What's fake and real? Idiot, run. Vulture had reached Luli. He screamed and flew away in a blur, leaving Luli behind. Ding Anji wanted to drag Luli with him, but Luli had released the honesty talisman and took out a soft sword. He was about to attack. He couldn't be bothered to pull them, so he turned into a streak of white light and flew into the distance with the others. Boom boom boom. Luli's honesty talisman flew out. He ignored the horrifying flying soul beast king and only attacked the 4 flying soul beasts on the left and right. At the same time, his flexible sword released a soul attack. His eyes lit up with a golden light as he released his wind spirit technique. Boom boom boom. 2 of the flying soul beasts were smashed away. The other soul beasts whooshed over to Luli and then pierced through him and went after Ding Anji and the others. It was as if they could not see Luli and their only thought was to go after Ding Anji and the others. This, Ding Anji and the others had been watching with psychic power. They were shocked to see this. They could not figure out why Luli was still alive. Illusion? Vulture blinked. He was ashamed and angry. He, a warrior of the 6th tribulation, could not see it. Instead, he was seen through by a warrior at the initial stage of the 5th tribulation. This was so shameful. Luli was fighting against the 4 soul beasts. It was hard for him to fight 4 soul beasts by himself. Ding Anji made up his mind and rushed over. Indeed, the group of flying soul beasts were illusory, and they pierced through his body. Boom, boom, boom. Ding Anji felt humiliated. He flew back to Luli and vented his anger on the 4 soul beasts. Soon, he and Luli worked together to kill the soul beasts. Vulture flew over with the 3 of them. As for the soul beasts, they were gone. Silence was restored. Ding Anji and the other 3 were breathing heavily. What is your name? Ding Anji soon calmed himself down. He cupped his fists in embarrassment and said, I am Ding Anji. I joined the sect more than 500 years ago. This is Vulture, this is Zhang Yang, and this is Li Mu. We all joined around the same time. Brother Ding, nice to meet you. Luli cupped his fists and said, I am Luli. I became a registered disciple 3 years ago. This is the test. If I fail, I might not be able to call you brother anymore. Don't give up so easily. As long as you work hard, there will be chances. The seniors in the sect have discerning eyes, and they will not give up on you as long as it is gold. Ding Anji patted Luli's shoulder, and then asked the question that the 4 wanted to ask. Luli, how did you know that it was an illusion? We all felt it was so real. There was nothing fake about it. King of Flying Soul Beasts. Luli smiled lightly and said, Brothers, you are too nervous. The King of Flying Soul Beasts is so powerful. If it is real, how come it has not caught up with you after chasing you for such a long time? Oh, the 4 looked at each other and forced a smile. They were so scared that they didn't pay attention to these things. It was just as Luli said. If it was really the King of Flying Soul Beasts, how could the 4 of them run away? At least, Zhang Yang and Li Mu were already dead. Ah! In the castle of the Celestial City, Patriarch Lu slapped his forehead and said, I am careless, careless. I can't believe that I have made such a stupid mistake. My brew of flowers. Ha 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 ha. Emperor Rui and the other 2 emperors laughed. The 3 of them thought they had lost. After all, Luli was so close to the edge of the Milky Way. If he ran out in fear, they would lose. Unexpectedly, when Luli was about to run out, he suddenly came to his senses. This made the 3 of them feel like a cooked duck had flown away, and then it flew back. Emperor Rui liked Luli to begin with. At this moment, he looked at Luli with gentler eyes. The other 2 emperors saw Luli more favorably now that he had won 10 bottles of brew of flowers. Of course, the other 2 emperors and Patriarch Lu were not happy with Luli. Patriarch Lu, in particular, was gnashing his teeth with hatred. He took out dozens bottles of brew of flowers and threw them to Emperor Rui. He paced around the castle in a huff and said, No, I want to make another bet. Emperor Rui, do you dare? Emperor Rui took a sip of tea leisurely and said with a smile, I have won 60 bottles of brew of flowers anyway. Patriarch Lu, if you want to bet, I will. Let's bet on 60 bottles of brew of flowers. What are we betting on? Or on whether this punk can see through illusions? I'm not betting on this. Patriarch Lu shook his head and said, We have set up several times. This punk must be suspicious. What's more, he does have some abilities. The illusions of beasts cannot scare him. Let's wait for a chance. It is still early. Let's see if there is a suitable chance, and we can make another bet. Chapter 27:10. Guan Qianqiu? Which one? Patriarch Lu was confused. Emperor Rui pointed to the north and said, This one. 3 years ago, he was the most popular one and also the most powerful one. Unfortunately, he was unlucky and didn't make it. But he ranked first among the registered disciples and has just reached the Lord Realm. He is a descendant of the ancient Guan family. Patriarch Lu was curious. He looked into the crystal ball and saw a young man at the north. At the moment, Guan Qianqiu and the other 3 were fighting against a daughter beast. The beast was powerful and Guan Qianqiu was fighting against it by himself. The others were just helping him. A descendant of the ancient Guan family? Elder Lu revealed a doubtful expression. He asked the sovereigns next to him about Guan Qianqiu's situation. He then observed Guan Qianqiu for a long time. After an hour, he finally asked, "Are you sure the two of them will clash? The young man of the ancient Guan family cannot make it to the next rank because of Lu Li. Lu Li ruined his plan." Emperor said with a smile, "I heard from my disciple that Guan Qianqiu said that he will make trouble for Lu Li." "Oh?" Patriarch Lu asked, "Then who do you bet on? You bet on Lu Li?" "No." Emperor shook his head and said, "I can only bet that Lu Li will not lose." "How about it, Patriarch Lu? Are you up for it?" "Ha ha ha ha." Patriarch Lu laughed, and so did the other great Emperor Realm warriors. One was at the initial stage of the fifth tribulation, and one was at the initial stage of the sixth tribulation. Guan Qianqiu had a sovereign weapon. He was much more powerful. Apart from the fact that Lu Li's defense was strong, they didn't see much about his combat abilities. What was more, Guan Qianqiu had 3 people with him, and one of them was a powerful warrior at the sixth tribulation. Once a fight broke out, how could Lu Li not suffer? Without any hesitation, Patriarch Lu shouted, "Okay, I will bet with you. 60 bottles of blossom wine. You can be my witness. I will bet 10 bottles as well. I want to join in the fun. Okay, I will play as well. Emperor Rui, do you dare to take the bet?" The 3 great Emperor Realm warriors all said. Winning or losing was not important to them. It was boring to stay here and they wanted to have some fun. Lu Li was only at the initial stage of the fifth tribulation. Even if he had some strange skills, as far as they could tell, it was impossible for him to come out unscathed against Guan Qianqiu and the others. Everyone placed their bets and became excited, as if they were waiting for the lottery to begin. That being said, Guan Qianqiu was at the north and Lu Li was at the east. It was impossible for them to meet each other any time soon. Also, Guan Qianqiu and the others clearly wanted to earn more points to advance, so they wouldn't go looking for Lu Li for the time being. Lu Li didn't leave. Instead, he joined the team at Ding Anji's invitation. Patriarch Lu and the others were worried. Later, when Guan Qianqiu and Ding Anji came to help, Lu Li would not be at a disadvantage. Since they had already come to an agreement, Elder Lu and the others wouldn't say anything. They sat down and observed the situation inside. Right now there was a harmonious atmosphere inside. No one dared to act rashly and they were all busy clearing out the void beast. The bewildering void was huge. 50 people scattered around would rarely bump into each other. Now that Lu Li was with Ding Anji and the other 3, it was much easier to deal with the flying soul beasts. Previously, Lu Li was only in a small territory with few flying soul beasts. Now that they were together, the distribution was reasonable. The 5 of them flew fast and could run into flying soul beasts constantly. At first, Vulture looked down on Lu Li. But after what happened just now, he saw Lu Li in a different light. With Lu Li's cooperation, the speed was faster. Vulture was no longer unhappy. That being said, Vulture hardly talked to Lu Li. Deep down, he was proud. The 5 of them flew around in the Milky Way. There seemed to be an endless number of flying soul beasts. It was as if the Milky Way was their base camp, an ant's nest with countless flying soul beasts. Actually, the flying soul beasts are not in the Milky Way. Ding Anji could tell that Lu Li was confused. He explained, "Their nests are in the void and they can travel freely in the void. There are more cracks in space in the Milky Way, so we can alarm the flying soul beasts here. Do you understand?" Lu Li understood. He admired Ding Anji's character. Though he wasn't sure if he could stay at the Celestial Emperor sect, he was happy to make a friend. The 2 of them chatted along the way. Time flew by quickly. Soon, 9 months had passed. Lu Li and the others took turns to rest. Apart from resting, they spent the rest of the time killing flying soul beasts. The harvest was great. The ratio was that Ding Anji and Vulture would take 2 flying soul beasts, and Luli and the other 3 would take 1 flying soul beast. They would take turns to collect the corpses. Even so, Luli had collected more than 500 flying soul beasts during the 9 months, which was more than 50,000 points. To kill the flying locust beasts, he would have to kill more than 50,000. Luli was confident that he would have more points than the average registered disciples. Of course, there might be others who would have more points than him. For example, Guan Qianxiu. Guan Qianxiu had brought several people with him, and those people seemed to be cooperating with him? Over the past 9 months, it wasn't that no one came over. There were 2 groups of people. But they left when they saw Ding Anji and Vulture were here. Vulture in particular, the 2 teams seemed to be afraid of him. They left after he glared at them. Luli was delighted that Guan Qianxiu and Chu Yen didn't come looking for trouble. It would be perfect if they could go on like this. When the time was up and everyone was out, Luli didn't think it was a good thing. At least, it would give the higher-ups the feeling that they were fighting among themselves. But what Luli didn't know was that the 10 judges had been expecting Guan Qianxiu to make trouble for him. Another month passed by. Finally, trouble came. Luli had just killed a flying soul beast when he heard some noises from afar. Another month passed by. Finally, trouble came. Luli had just killed a flying soul beast when he heard some noises coming from afar. Everyone checked with psychic power. Luli saw a handsome young master with a heroic spirit. Luli put on a bitter face. Guan Qianxiu was here. It seemed that Guan Qianxiu had gained many points and was here to make trouble for Luli. Guan Qianxiu stared at Luli from the distance. He put on a gentle smile and a cold expression. They flew over. Ding Anji and Vulture squinted and stared at a man next to Guan Qianxiu. When the 4 arrived, Ding Anji and the other 3 cupped their fists and saluted to the 6th tribulation warrior next to Guan Qianxiu. Greetings, Brother Ruan. There was a warrior next to Guan Qianxiu. He seemed to be a middle-aged man with a calm temperament. He nodded, glanced over to Luli and the others and said, Anji, Vulture, go. We have something to talk to Luli about. Ding Anji, Vulture and the other 3 were surprised. The 4 clearly came with ill intentions. Luli had offended Brother Ruan? Ding Anji and Vulture looked at each other. Ding Anji thought about it and said, Brother Ruan, Brother Lu is with us. What business do you have with him? Brother Ruan pulled a long face and said, I want you to go. Don't ask questions. Do you understand? Ding Anji bit his lips. He wanted to say something but said nothing in the end. He seemed to be afraid of this Brother Ruan. He threw Luli a look and left with Vulture and the others. Chapter 27:11. They are looking for trouble. Inside the castle, Master Lu was smiling. Their mission was to monitor all the trial takers, observe their behavior, pick out the good ones and give them the chance to advance. They hated the fact that the disciples in the sect fought with each other and looked for trouble for no reason. But now, many great emperors were excited. If outsiders knew about this, they would be taken aback. It was understandable. Great emperors were human beings as well. They had a long life. At their level, especially at the Heaven Emperor sect, they would be bored. None of the forces dared to provoke them. Apart from cultivation, there was not much else for them to do. At their realm, it was too difficult to make progress. How could they kill time? Many people chose to do interesting things such as forging weapons, comprehending divine inscriptions, teaching disciples, etc. It was lonely at the top. Usually, they had to pretend to be powerful people, cold and heartless. However, deep down in their bones, they still had 7 emotions and 6 desires. Because they had too few friends and too high a status, these emotions had always been hidden in their hearts with nowhere to vent them. But now that there was an opportunity to vent them, they would often be very excited. Like now. The great emperors were betting and they could enjoy a show. They had been looking forward to it for a long time. How could they make the bet if it did not start? How could they? They were not only watching Lu Li and Guan Qianqiu, but also Emperor Rui and Master Lu. Therefore, apart from one great emperor in closed-door cultivation, the others were looking at Lu Li and Guan Qianqiu. Forget it. At least, this punk is good at composure, Emperor Jun commented. He knew that Guan Qianqiu and the others were here for trouble, but Lu Li was calm and didn't run away. Emperor Jun acknowledged Lu Li's composure. Another great emperor said, 1 against 4 and at the initial stage of the 5th tribulation. It would be strange if this punk could not suffer. Let's see. Emperor Rui's smile disappeared. He sighed. Master Lu, I think I am going to lose this time. Ha ha. Master Lu didn't look at Emperor Rui. He stared at Lu Li and waved his hand. Maybe this punk can give you a surprise. Rui, don't be discouraged. Ha ha ha. The others laughed. Patriarch Lu's words were irritating. Luckily, Emperor Rui didn't mind. He just looked at Lu Li, wondering how Lu Li would deal with it. In the chaotic void, Ding Anji and the others had gone away. Lu Li still said nothing. He stood there in silence. However, he had already secretly activated the spinning dragon technique and the heavenly armor technique, ready to attack at any time. Guan Qianqiu didn't say anything. He just looked at Lu Li with a smile. After the time for half an incense stick to burn and Ding Anji and the others were far away, Brother Ruan nodded and said, Lu Li, we meet again. Lu Li shrugged and said, Don't waste time. Tell me what you want and I will take it. You're quite arrogant, aren't you? A warrior at the peak of the 5th rank next to Guan Qianqiu looked at Lu Li in a provocative manner and said, You are just at the initial stage of the 5th tribulation and a registered disciple. You don't know how to salute your senior brothers? Forget about bowing. You're not worthy of my respect. Lu Li answered indifferently, still looking at Guan Qianqiu. Guan Qianqiu waved his hand to stop the man from going on. He said, Lu Li, I will not make things difficult for you. Give us the dead bodies of the beasts of the void and we will leave. What a joke! Lu Li sneered and said, Why should I give you the beasts that I have worked so hard to kill? Aren't you afraid that the seniors of the sect will punish you for robbing in public? Ha ha! Guan Qianqiu smiled proudly and said, The law of the jungle is an unspoken rule of the Heaven Emperor sect. The sect doesn't care about the quarrels between disciples as long as no lives are harmed. Being able to rob is also an ability, isn't it? Only a group of cubs can give birth to a beast king. Can a group of lambs give birth to a beast king? Admittedly, Guan Qianqiu had a point. Lu Li knew there was nothing he could say. How could he agree to give up the dead bodies? Lu Li said in a deep voice, You are not wrong. But 4 of us fighting over one is not honorable no matter how you put it. You want my beast's bodies? How about you fight me alone? Of course, if you want to fight me all at once, I will accept it. Ha ha ha. Guan Qianqiu and the others laughed, especially the 2 at the peak of the 5th tribulation. The one who spoke took out a saber, pointed at Lu Li and said, We don't need 4 people to deal with you. I alone am enough. You can't. Lu Li wagged his finger and then pointed to Guan Qianqiu and Brother Ruan. He said, If you want to defeat me, you must have the 2 of them. If you don't believe me, you can ask young Master Guan. I defeated him at the recruitment ceremony. Guan Qianqiu's face clouded over. Seeing that the others were about to lose their temper, Guan Qianqiu waved his hand and said, Brother Lu, don't be angry. I will wash away the humiliation on my own. Today I will beat him up with my own hand. You guys help me. Ha ha. Lu Li smiled. He pointed to the distance and said, Guan Qianqiu, let's go over there. Please stay here and watch. See how I defeat your young Master Guan again. Guan Qianqiu, you may have reached the 6th tribulation, but I can defeat you with a flip of my hand." With that said, Luli didn't look at the four anymore. He turned around and flew away. Sure enough, Brother Juan and the other three didn't move. Only Guan Qianxiu followed Luli. Guan Qianxiu's eyes were filled with anger and killing intent. If it were not for the fact that this was the sex assessment, he would have killed Luli without any scruples. The young man of the emperor family of the old Guan is too green. Inside the castle, Emperor Jun sighed and said, "He is irritated by a few words. Not only is he impatient, but he has also wasted his absolute advantage." Two great Emperor Realm warriors nodded. They had fought their way through mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Many of them wouldn't be particular in a fight, nor would they be irritated so easily. In a fight of life and death, there would be nothing left if one died. Those who cared about their reputation would die quickly. Those who were easily irritated would die faster. Once enraged, they would not be calm and rational. It would be easy for their opponents to find loopholes or set up traps to kill them. Guan Qianxiu's behavior disappointed many people. Many people here had seen the late emperor of the Guan family. They had thought that a young man from the Guan family who had reached the sixth tribulation at such a young age would be good in all aspects. As a matter of fact, under normal circumstances, Guan Qianxiu wouldn't be irritated so easily. The main reason why Guan Qianxiu became a registered disciple of the Celestial Emperor sect was that he wanted revenge and to kill Luli. When one was blinded by hatred, one would have a mental barrier and be easily agitated. Let's keep watching. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.